Greetings world. The FCC has become a great danger to the internet. The FCC is attempting to strip down and remove Title II of net neutrality. Net neutrality is the basic principle that protects our free speech on the internet. Title II of the Communications Act is what provides the legal foundation for net neutrality and prevents internet service providers like Comcast, Verizon, Time Warner, and AT&T from slowing down and blocking websites, or charging apps and sites extra fees to reach an audience which they then pass along to consumers. The internet has thrived precisely because of net neutrality. It's what makes it so vibrant and innovative, a place for creativity, free expression, and exchange of ideas. Without net neutrality, the internet will become more like cable TV, where the content you see is what your provider puts in front of you. Let us break it down to you. This is a story about that mom and pop shop down the street. How many of those shops do you normally see nowadays? Big businesses and warehouse stores have almost made it a thing of the past. The main reason is because small businesses can keep overhead down enough to keep prices competitive with huge chain stores. Luckily, the mom and pop store down the street are ahead of their time and supplement their income with online sales, which greatly help their bottom line. What will that mean for this small family business? What it could mean is that before now online, this small business had a chance. They could stand up and be noticed. They could reach more people, lower their inventory and overhead, as well as open opportunities for growth that far outreach their communities. Sound good, right? We love a good story about the underdog succeeding. But wait, what's this? The FCC wants to take down net neutrality. Small family businesses are being pushed out of towns and cities to make room for big companies with large warehouses and bank accounts, and now thanks to net neutrality being attacked and basically dismantled from the inside out, small businesses are being pushed off the internet too. We are taught about the American dream that if we work hard and keep focused on a goal that we can own a home, a business, and make a comfortable life for our families, but as many people know, that is beginning to be a thing of the past. Not only has Fannie and Freddie helped ruin the dream of owning a home for countless Americans, but now it appears that the FCC will attack the American small business owner on the very same platform they had made their last stand, the internet. We know what you may be thinking, Anonymous. It's okay. Take off your tinfoil hat. Large ISP have come out in support of net neutrality. They are only misunderstood. Our response to this is, are you getting up? First off, let's be honest, these corporations are going to spend do whatever they can to get more money in their pockets. They do not care about the little guy or small businesses, and they certainly don't care about being honest with the public. But Anonymous, isn't this just a possibility? What makes you think the big ball companies would actually do this sort of thing? Well, we could start with history, since it has proven to be quite the indicator in the past. In 2007, Verizon decided they would block text messages to their customers from rural pro-choice America due to their own moral stance. Don't believe us? Search it up on DuckDuckGo. Whatever your stance on abortion rights, you must see the concern here. If companies we pay to give us access to the internet are allowed to pick and choose the information that gets to the public, that is censorship at its highest form. Keep the internet neutral, America. Small mom and pop businesses have been slowly but surely pushed out of Main Street USA. Please, for the sake of what's left of the American dream, let's not let them get pushed from the internet as well.
We are anonymous. We are legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us.
Hello, I'm Alex Jones, and I'm a radio and television host based in Austin, Texas. And for many years, I've been exposing criminal activities of global elite, also known as the New World Order. In past films, we've documented the centralization of power, the move towards world government, the attack on the nation state, self-defense, the Second Amendment, family values, that is, the family itself, as well as private property rights. But time and time again in my research, I come, well, eye to eye with something that's even hard for me to believe. And that's that the elite, again, the so-called establishment kings, those that know best, the visions of the anointed ones, are obsessed with the occult, from presidents to governors to the heads of industry. We've all seen the stories of presidents and first ladies obsessed with their astrologers making national policy decisions upon their recommendations. Spiritual guides, shamans in the White House. My friends, it gets far worse than that. Now, I personally am a Christian, but even an atheist should be concerned about the information we're about to bring forward in this new documentary film, The Dark Secrets Inside Bohemian Grove. You see, for over 120-plus years in Northern California, in Sonoma County, on a 2,700-acre secluded redwood grove, leaders from around the world, prime ministers, chancellors, presidents, governors, again, the heads of industry, banking, academia, the media, Hollywood, only a select few, a little over 2,000 people, travel there to engage in bizarre, ancient Canaanite, Luciferian, Babylon mystery religion ceremonies. At least that was the rumors. And so I went to the library and got on the internet and saw many of the mainstream news articles admitting that world leaders do indeed go there, and they fly into San Francisco and other surrounding cities and drive out into the rural hills and mountains of Northern California, and that the stories have been coming out that they worship some 45-foot stone owl god. And then I began to read some of the documentation on this Moloch character of the Old Testament, mentioned many times in Leviticus. That's in the Bible. Why are world leaders traveling to the middle of nowhere to worship this thing? Well, I had to check it out for myself. And I'm proud of my team. Mike Hansen, Violet Nichols. They traveled with me there. We talked to some of the locals discreetly. We successfully infiltrated, with the help of some of the locals and Channel 4, World of Wonder, British television that teamed up with us. And I successfully infiltrated through the Secret Service, through the guards, through the Sonoma County Sheriff's Department. We were inside 4 hours. That's only one day out of the 2 weeks that they meet there for the admitted Summer Fire Festival of the Bohemian Club. Well, basically that's enough for me. It's hard to even describe it with words, and I hope that our hidden cameras can give you at least a small piece of what I witnessed. To have world leaders engaging in this type of sickening behavior, oh yes, there's much more to come. Mock human sacrifices, they claim, just shocks the very foundations of what Americans believe their leaders to be. And then to have it intimately connected with world government. It doesn't make a lot of sense until you research history. All throughout history, spanning back into the mist of the beginnings of civilization, we see world leaders from the empires of old, from the Aztec kings and priests, to Babylonian leaders, to ancient Rome, engaging in twisted behavior. Could it be that when you have all the power and all the women and all the money and all the lands and all the art, you have to do something new? You have to go against the basic grain of humanity. You have to get off in a sick way. That's what we witnessed in Northern California, July 15th, 2000. Get ready to go inside the Bohemian Grove. The Bohemian Club, as it's known today, was founded in 1873 in San Francisco in Northern California. Many of the club's original annals, dating back to before the turn of the century, admit that local artists, writers, newspapermen, you name it, wanted a place away from the so-called backwardsness of the West Coast, the Judeo-Christian ethic. They found that place an hour and a half north of San Francisco, outside of the tiny town of Monterey. Their annals even admit an obsession with the occult and what they called Druid rituals. Amongst the great redwood trees, they revived ancient ceremonies that in truth had their roots not in the Druids, but in Babylon itself. As the railroads brought commerce and larger populations, the prestige of the club grew until, in the year 2000, it is a gathering place for the world establishment, the elite. We're about to show you some of the key evidence documenting this. It is absolutely central to understand that these bizarre activities have been engaged in going back to 1873 and are not some new fanciful whim of the trendies on the West Coast. By the turn of the century, there was already a 10 to 15-year waiting list. Presidents from Howard Taft to Herbert Hoover were on the membership roster. Not to mention, later, famous war general Dwight D. Eisenhower, later to become president. The roster of the Bohemian Club reads like a who's who of the elite. Look at this photo taken inside the Grove back in 1963. There you'll see Ronald Reagan, and sitting two people over from him, later to become president, Richard Milhous Nixon. Frankly, we don't know if these men actively enjoy the things that go on inside the Bohemian Club. But one thing is perfectly certain from the evidence. They are forced to go and attend and take part in these activities if they wish to be elevated to the highest levels of the geopolitical power structure. Take George Bush Sr., documented member. And then, of course, there's his son. Now, the last 4 generations of Bushes have also attended the Skull and Bones Society at Yale, well known to be steeped in the occult. Then there's Bill Clinton, a frequent attendee. Upon closer inspection, the entire federal government at the highest levels is infested with Bohemian Club members. And it doesn't stop there. America's private run-for-profit Federal Reserve Bank, from its very inception in 1913, has been run by prominent members of the Bohemian Club. Central Bank Chairman Alan Greenspan was seen leaving the Bohemian Grove only 1 month before he was appointed chairman of the Federal Reserve. He had to be a made man to be a member of the most powerful cabal on the planet. Historical records are clear from major universities. The Manhattan Project was planned and instituted and run from the Bohemian Club. All of this going on in an atmosphere of bizarre revelry. You're looking at an illustration from a November 1989 issue of Spy magazine. Spy goes undercover with Henry Kissinger, Merv Griffin, and William F. Buckley Jr. The story was clearly a shill, meant to misdirect the intensifying media coverage that the Grove was getting in the late 1980s. The writer's spin is obvious. They're just masters of the universe, big frat boys blowing off steam. We'll get back to this article later. Because you can clearly see that the mantra in the spin story has been picked up as a front by all the local media. Sure, they're elitist. Sure, they have some bizarre rituals. But what's the big deal? They're just having fun. If that was the case, why would David Gergen, presidential advisor to President Clinton, resign from the Bohemian Club and 17 other organizations when it was revealed in 1993? Organizations like the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderberg Group. But it's not just the Washington Times and the Sacramento Bee. You're looking at an illustration from the pages of Parade magazine, February 22nd, 1981. This story was the most accurate and revealing, detailing the so-called mock human sacrifice. Former German Chancellor Helmut Schmidt wrote extensively in his memoirs, Men and Powers, a Political Retrospective, goes into great detail about the secret establishment running the world, the Trilateral Commission, the CFR, the Bilderberg Group, and of course, ladies and gentlemen, the Bohemian Grove, a place that he often talked about being a wonderful hideaway, a place to spend time with Nelson and David Rockefeller, and to talk about world government and steering societies. On page 225 of Men and Powers, he talks about it being one of the most astounding places he had ever visited in the United States, and how that feeling intensified over the years with subsequent visits. The book goes on for page after page discussing the corporate, private, governmental infrastructure of world government. Going back to the Spy magazine spin piece, they have lots of rosy illustrations of drunken establishment types dancing around having fun with the rituals going on in the background. They even admit that they wear bizarre Ku Klux Klan style robes. And there's even a photo released by the Grove of the ritual being engaged in. They talk about the incredible security surrounding the Grove. And they even admit that a corpse, a sacrifice, is borne across the lake. But it's all in good fun. We did massive research on the occult. And one of the libraries we visited was that of Professor Tex Mars of Aeronautics. He also has written literally dozens of books on the occult. His library was very revealing about the obsession of elitists throughout history with the occult.
Front group after front group to conceal and really subvert. But behind all of these groups, there is a small cadre or elite, a core. And what you have done, I think, with the Bohemian Grove is you have exposed one of the premier organizations of the whole New World Order arrangement, you might say. Of course, we can go back in history, all the way back to ancient Egypt, Babylon, or Greece, Rome. And I think you're going to see sort of the roots of the Bohemian Grove, but particularly in the Illuminati era, originating during the French Revolutionary days. You know, there we had the actual order of the Illuminati with Adam Weishaupt and all of his evil philosophers, let's just call them, Voltaire and the others. And that has come up all the way to today. Hitler, of course, was a Bohemian. I think it's more Babylon mystery religion. All of the elements are there. Of course, even the owl is a symbol of ancient mystery Babylon. The owl was worshipped by the ancient Egyptians and by the Babylonians. And it's interesting to me that many of the members of the Bohemian Grove have in their homes, as I understand it, small figurines of owls. And I believe they actually worship those owls as a symbol of the deity, the great goddess of Babylon. And of course, here again we have the counterfeit of Christ's sacrifice on the cross. I think all of those things, there had to be, in my belief, an occultist, a deep occultist, who designed each of the elements of this ceremony. It wasn't just a bunch of guys sit together at a bar and said, hey, let's have a good time, the cremation of care, and why don't we do this or that. I believe it was purposely designed, each element in its turn, for what they did. No doubt about it.
Slide the metal end into the buckle and adjust by pulling on the loose end of the strap.
After landing in San Francisco at the International Airport, we traveled through the city, across the Golden Gate Bridge, into deeper Northern California. Northern California, home to the giant sequoia redwoods. From there north to Santa Rosa, going west on Highway 12, the gateway to Bohemian Grove. We spent the first night in Santa Rosa before getting up early in the morning and traveling into the town of Occidental, where we were going to meet the British media and start our investigation. Well, here we are in Northern California, right outside the Bohemian Grove. The fruits of nature. But I'll tell you this, I don't worship it and sacrifice things to it. Let's go find out what's going on. Yeah. Well, here we are, folks. Turning on to the Bohemian Highway and Bohemian Grove. We're going to find out what in the New World Order is going on here.
Thank you, Park.
No, I tell you, it's beautiful out here during the day, but it is spooky at night. I don't know if you guys got some footage of it, all the fog and the rest of it.
So are you excited?
Oh yeah.
I've got a map. You guys want to look at that?
My question is, what, the history, what do they do if they catch you in there?
They have us killed.
I doubt that.
Skinned alive.
I don't know. I
They throw
don't.
darts at your skin and body. Hang upside down on a redwood tree.
I doubt that.
No, we'll see. No, I think they'll just check us out.
What about me? Because I'm a woman, I can't really sneak in, can I? I mean,
You can't go
I
in.
can.
You've got to stay.
I've got to stay.
Yeah.
I've got to stay behind in the spooky Occidental Lodge.
I have no problem. If there's a road, if I can be shown a way to insert myself into this with Hanson. But then I need to know where the cremation of care, what day they're supposed to do it, where this pond is.
Tomorrow night at dusk.
I'm not going to end up tied down on a pentagram with Henry Kissinger's fat belly hanging over while he's naked with a big dagger, am I? I just want to make sure that's a joke.
Just a thought. It's very.
Oh, like Governor Bush running around in a pink tutu, foaming at the mouth with a purple wig on, am I? No. Supposedly I hear that's what they do, so. I don't know.
I think they do these things, but the question is why.
And these power brokers, which bomb innocent countries and slaughter people and, you know, pump the food chain full of garbage and just everything else they do, it's probably something fun for them. They really get off on being bad little boys.
And rule the world. I mean, this is for some people. This is the secret room.
Well, I mean, certainly in the whole class system, it's the pleasures of class. And now what class is, the power that you have is something different. And to me, I mean, from my research of Bohemian Grove, and you guys have obviously done more, I've read a lot of mainstream articles, alternative, talked to people, talked to some guests. It's really where people go in there to do whatever they want to do. So there are probably people sitting around fishing and probably people sitting around doing something completely different.
Okay, there's the stage. Right, that's where the talks happen. Because they've got this amphitheatre, and they have these kind of talks, and this is where George Bush gives talks and people like that on this stage. Oh look, there's the lake. There you go. Lakeside talks. There's the lake. There's the shrine. See? Right there. That's where.
Honey, come get a shot of this. Now, where's this river? This is near the Russian River.
Can you see it?
Now, see, here's the shrine of their devil owl, which they even admit has its roots in like Babylon, and the Druids had them and everything else. So all over the world, this weird owl shows up. Some cultures, they've thrown children inside the bowels of this burning owl. That's historical. We've all read in the Bible about throwing your children to idols inside their, you know. So it's weird behavior, definitely. So it needs to be investigated. And plus, it gets the adrenaline up. Thrill seekers have to have more. But here you go, honey. Right here at the shrine. You can zoom in on that, Mike. I'm saying honey to my girlfriend Violet, not Mike here. We're getting real bohemian now, aren't we? This is honey. We get a close shot right here. But it did sound like that she's definitely leftward leaning. Then we get into the whole semantical debate about is there a left and a right, and to me there really isn't. There's command and control on one end and anarchy on the other, and I want to be on the middle of the real spectrum. Certainly got to have some control in a complex society and civilization, but all the developments I see are pretty bad towards dehumanization. And now you got the UN demanding everybody sign on to this International Criminal Court. And they're telling the U.S. if we don't sign on, it won't matter. If 60 countries ratify, we'll be under its control. I mean, we're here. We're at global government now. When they're saying they're going to have some world court in the Netherlands that they'll take anybody they want to. These are in fact, I was reading some of the talks that they've given and they've released that the Bohemian Grove has discussed, and it's all population control, world courts. You're talking 20 years ago. So definitely some stuff going on here that's pretty important. But is it the ultimate elitist retreat? I would imagine those we don't even know the names of. This is probably just one more steering committee where they bring in a lot of underlings and high-level corporate chieftains that really aren't the upper top echelon, make them feel important, and then implement some type of strategy. From the stories I've read and things that happen, I mean, it is pretty well documented that people run around naked. They have orgies. They go into town and have orgies, and these are world leaders. I got a serious problem with that. Just by the very nature of how this, to me, Bohemian Grove is probably a way to compromise people. You want to be in the New World Order Club. It's like a big kid fraternity. And just like in fraternities, you have to do weird things. Here, you probably do weird things. But I got a problem with governors and presidents and prime ministers and corporate chieftains running around and doing this when they have so much power over what happens in the public domain. They have a responsibility to disclose what they're doing. So I think it is important, like you were saying, to somehow try to maintain some security and not be way out in the open, because they'll call in a bunch of security. I hear,
like he often is.
I hear he really enjoys himself here.
I think Henry Kissinger will be here.
Yeah. Well, if I got a stink detector, we'll be able to find out where he's at. Oh, it's like everything evil you can imagine, Kissinger's always involved in it.
Isn't he a Republican, though?
I'm not a Republican. That's the point I keep making. This whole Democrat-Republican deal is a complete... People always go back to that, though. Probably like in your country, you've got Labor and you've got the Tories over there, and it's all the same people behind closed doors. It's just a big joke. And your leadership, our leadership, it's all the same people. I mean, you do see a fight going on, but it's two different management teams of the same system, bidding for control. What I call the CEO jobs of Slavery Incorporated.
Do you worry for Alex, Violet?
I do. I just, because Alex gets so impassioned by what he's doing that sometimes I'm afraid that he might be a little bit, reckless or maybe a little bit too fearless. I worry about Alex when he drives down the street to come home. Especially I used to worry about him when he had come home every night from the same, radio studio at the same time in the same car. And, I worry about him sometimes when he's late getting back in the studio and he doesn't give me a call. I mean, he is putting himself out there, but I think the fact that he's in the public eye as much as he is really, keeps him safe to a certain degree. So maybe something like this is, people might not necessarily know where he is right now, people that listen to the radio or whatever, so it's maybe a little bit more risky, and it's a little creepy at night up here in the woods,
And you're definitely not dangerous. You're not going to do anything stupid this weekend.
Well, I mean, dangerous to what? Dangerous to myself? Are these people dangerous? They certainly may be, but I'm completely nonviolent when it comes to just going out there and trying to get the information. That's what I'm trying to do. I mean, I'm an activist first and foremost, but also a journalist in that I'll make some jokes and speculate occasionally because I'm a radio talk show host. But when I say something that I believe, I have to be on target about it. But dangerous? I'm definitely dangerous to corrupt bureaucrats and their financial bosses that would like to control the American people on the planet.
But not in a violent way.
Not in a violent way. And long before global government came out in the open, in the last 4 or 5 years, they were conditioning the public that anyone that talks about global government is a kook, a weirdo, a terrorist, a racist. And now they're out on the nightly news saying global government's here, you better accept it, we're getting rid of juries all across the planet. The IMF, the World Bank, basically runs things now. The WTO decides what you can buy and sell and trade on the international market. But see, they've preconditioned us that it doesn't exist. They've preconditioned us that anybody that talks about this stuff and who is against it is a kook or a racist because it doesn't exist. And then everybody's decided, well, I'm going to be culturally cool. I want to be in style. I want to be accepted. So even when they're hearing the news admit it and tell us how great it is, they've already pre-positioned it psychologically that it's not acceptable, it's not kosher to discuss it. Do you see the tactic they're using there? Mm-hmm. 5 years ago, I would laugh when I heard about black helicopters. I would say, I'm about taxes, I'm about corruption, I'm about getting local control back, I'm about states' rights, everything's coming under federal control. I was pretty mainstream, what you'd call so-called conservative. Then I saw the light when black helicopters started going into North Carolina. I started going into Florida. They fired into an all-night restaurant in Miami, just training, firing bullets into a place where people were eating. They started burning buildings. Police chiefs started throwing them out of their town, San Antonio. All this started happening, and I said, whoa, this is real. And then I realized that I was preconditioned, even as a so-called conservative person who understood that the media lied. I didn't realize how thick the propaganda was. That they preconditioned us before they release something on us, that it, number one, doesn't exist in our minds with classic doublethink, but then it can re-exist at the same time if they say it does and it's good. So it's literally George Orwell's doublethink, and one has to have it to stay sane in this world. Well, I refuse to be a part of it. I mean, the news every day, black helicopters are a joke, they're stupid, the culture, commercials, movies. At the same time, almost every month in this country, they're attacking and terrorizing some town with burning buildings and terror. And I don't want to be part of their sick control freak system. I don't like these degenerate, inbred, New World Order crowd people. They're not going to run my life. They're not going to control me. And I'm going to try to expose them. And I think we've had some success doing that. Oh, look how pretty it is.
Sure is pretty.
Mike, you enjoying yourself?
A lot less spooky during the daytime.
It's all foggy. Now we're going to take our British friends down into the forest a little bit later tonight. Let them gallivant in the werewolf-ridden woods. Joking, of course, they'll have me on there. Alex Jones, radio talk show host, believes werewolves infest Northern California. They've been seen dancing with grizzly bears. Small pixies have been even witnessed playing violin for George Bush. Don't know what to make of what's going to happen. I can't even begin to imagine what we're going to discover when I infiltrate tomorrow and try to get the cremation of care. We're very close to the gateway to Bohemian Grove now. The first set of gates and security. They have a small guard check at the front, and then they have a larger second one. Not a through road. Get a shot of that. There's a guard gate right over it, a small guard gate, and then back further, an even more elaborate guard gate with surveillance cameras, you name it. Not a through road, ladies and gentlemen. Right up here in Northern California. How you doing, sir? Okay. Camp Meeker? Yeah. Oh, I'm Alex Jones. I make documentaries. I'm just curious, what do you think about Bohemian Grove?
I used to work there.
You used to work there?
Yeah.
And now you work at Camp Meeker?
No, I don't work. Yeah, I live in Camp Meeker.
Oh, you live there?
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Did you ever watch the cremation of care?
No. No.
What'd you do at the...
I just worked there.
But, I mean,
Yeah.
you never saw them march around in the red robes? And
No, no.
Oh, really? That doesn't go on?
But yeah, I get it.
Okay. Thanks. What have you guys heard about Bohemian Grove?
Oh, I don't know. A bunch of rich people, right?
Have you ever heard about the 40-foot stone owl and the mock human sacrifice?
I heard about it a little bit, yeah.
Roll that window
Not
down. We're going
yet.
to talk to you. Hold on. We'll go around here.
I don't know. Oh, yeah?
So what have you heard about the...
Oh, I just read stuff about it in the paper. I don't know. Some people don't like it. They protested or something weird.
But what about the 40-foot stone owl and the mock human sacrifice? You say you heard something about that?
Well, just what I read about in the paper.
Oh, the paper admitted that.
Well, no, I don't know if they admitted it. They just said people go protest it. It supposedly happens. Sounds kind of weird.
Does sound weird to me.
Yeah. Why you guys? What are you guys doing? This TV show or something?
We're just having fun.
Oh yeah.
This town isn't like Children of the Corn or anything, is it?
Oh no, nothing like that. I'm sure. I don't know though. Supposedly lots of people go there. Some kind of weird event. I don't know. You guys know anything about it? You don't know.
What would you say if we told you that they sacrificed a human in effigy in mock to a 40-foot stone owl in black and red and silver cloaks?
Sounds kind of different.
Do you think it's good to have?
Bull talks down.
Do you think it's good to have so-called world leaders secretly engaging in pagan activities?
I can't say it's that great. No.
Why would you have a problem with that?
Well, I don't know. It could be all right. Depends how you look at it.
Kind of relativist worldview, huh?
Yeah.
Got to sacrifice care to the winds, huh?
I don't know. Could just be for fun, or they could really be weird.
They run around naked. Run around naked and freak out. There you go.
Have you heard that?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, to tell you the truth, here's a funny story.
What have you heard? Okay, go ahead.
No, this is the truth. A couple years ago, I was down the road, just down Yar, past Camp Meeker, and I was stopped with a friend of mine.
Now, Camp Meeker's right outside Bohemian Grove.
That's an affirmative.
Yes.
And we were down the road, and we were stopped there because we were just having a cigarette, hanging out, taking a break, and some Secret Service men actually pulled up behind us and asked us what we were doing and why we were there. This is true. They were like, "What are you guys doing? Where are you at? Why are you parked here? What's going on?" And asked us a whole bunch of questions. What our names were, who we were affiliated with, where we lived, all kinds of stuff. Sort of interrogated us.
Did you answer their questions?
Totally.
I don't know. We always hear there's like big, fat, rich guys with prostitutes there.
Really?
Yeah.
What about the owl and the rituals?
I don't know anything about it.
Never heard about the rituals?
Rituals.
Ritual killing of a human sacrifice of a human?
Nope. Never heard of it.
What would you think if that was going on?
I think it's pretty weird. Wouldn't be that surprised. I mean, it is our government after all.
Hey, thanks for talking to us, bud.
You know?
Hey, I like your shirt. Declaration of Independence.
Yeah.
All right, man. Take care.
All right.
We're talking about the Bohemian Grove and trying to see what locals think about it. How it's all secret and all these fat cats there and the supposed strange rituals that go on. Are you a local?
No, but she is.
What do you think about the Bohemian Grove?
Well, I know what they call it. Let's see. It offers a lot of employment.
Offers a lot of employment?
Mm-hmm.
What's going on there? What kind of rituals do they do there?
I don't know. We're talking to locals about what the rumors are.
What are the rumors?
About a big 40-foot stone owl and simulated human sacrifice.
Oh, no. Oh, I don't know about that, but it's politicians that come that vacation there. And
It'd be really weird if politicians were acting like they were sacrificing people, wouldn't it?
No, you can't trust politicians, you know.
Oh, really? They might be doing it, huh?
Yeah, they might, yeah. Who knows? I mean, the politicians, you know.
I hear you, bud. Hey, good talking to you.
Right.
Appreciate it. You guys take care.
Good luck.
Hey, those are some pretty flowers.
Yeah, it's the sweet peas.
Those are real, folks.
Yeah, they're real.
You guys have a good one.
You
Enjoy
too.
the weather. Area.
Yeah?
Yeah.
This area is in trouble.
Yeah, we are.
It's in big trouble.
No, this is a wonderful area of the country. We're just asking locals what they think of the Bohemian Grove.
The Bohemian Grove is a wonderful place.
Have you been there?
Yeah, I've been in there a bunch of times.
What'd you do, work there? Or
Worked there, yeah. Yeah. You know when it's the most wonderfulest time? Is when nobody's there.
Oh, it's a beautiful area?
Yeah, yeah, very beautiful. It's got big trees.
Have you ever been there for the cremation of care?
No.
So you've never been there for the rituals?
No.
You ever heard about them?
Yes.
What have you heard they do, sir?
Nothing. They got that tree that looks like an owl.
Tree that looks like an owl?
Tree or rock, or it's a carving, or it's where the stage is.
But have you heard what they do during that?
No, I have no idea what they do during
What would you say if we told you they burn a human being in effigy? They don't really do it. They burn it in effigy.
I don't know what that means.
Well, they have like a dummy that looks like a person under a black blanket.
Huh?
They take it up there and burn it.
Oh, I don't know.
Pretty weird.
Huh?
Pretty weird.
Yeah, I've never seen that.
How long you lived around here?
I don't know. How old am I?
20,
40 years?
Yeah. Really? Oh, your whole life?
Yes.
What's your name, sir?
My name is Raul.
Yeah, this is Vital Roots.
How long has Vital Roots been here?
Couple years.
Couple years.
The Bohemian Grove?
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of politicians, a lot of big wigs, making a lot of big decisions.
Oh, really? Do you think it's good that they get together in secret and make all these so-called decisions?
Do I think it's good?
Yeah.
No, of course not. Do you?
What about the rituals? Have you heard anything about the rituals that go on there?
Oh, there's all kinds of rumors about rituals that go on there.
What type of rumors have you heard?
Don't make me go there.
Please, come on. We're trying to talk to some locals. I'm just wondering. It's interesting.
Well, I really don't know that much about it. You know, what I've read in books. There's books out about it.
Oh, you've read books on it, huh?
I had a book that was published in 1956 that was written about some of the rituals.
Because now it's been going on for 120 plus years.
Yeah.
I think they said they just had their 120th something anniversary.
Yeah.
What would you say if I told you that there's a 40-foot stone owl and that they burn a human being in effigy, not in real life, but in effigy?
I wouldn't believe it.
You wouldn't believe it?
Nah, I think it's a bunch of garbage.
So you doubt there's a stone owl, and you doubt that they...
Well, I wouldn't doubt there's a stone owl. Maybe there's a stone owl, but I wouldn't think that that's kind of, rumors it's rumors, what the word implies, pretty much.
Just a conspiracy.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of hearsay.
Pure conspiracy theory.
Whatever.
What have you heard about the Bohemian Grove?
It's where all of the, FBI and you're talking about the Bohemian Grove. Yeah, it's like the quote-unquote elite and presidential retreat.
Have you heard about the rituals that go on there?
No, I haven't. Well, the people who have more money than the rest of us in the world are a bit different. They're stingy. They want to hoard it all for themselves. And they think they're going to go to heaven. They're not. Because they don't know how to provide or do as Jesus told them to.
What would you say if I told you that they sacrifice a human in effigy before a giant 45 to 50-foot stone owl?
I would say that's probably why they're going to hell.
Yeah, this Australian we met yesterday, he's been here for 3 years, and he says that about 2-3 months ago the whole place was saturated with men in black, FBI, Secret Service and everything, going up and down the roads, checking everything, checking houses, everything from bombs and stuff, and then they all disappeared, and they were looking out for undesirables in the area who were persuaded to go. That was his story.
And now we're going
to talk to him.
And now we're going to infiltrate.
I think we should go and see what we can see.
The public has a right to know.
They do.
The public may have a right to know, but the people in this cafe, I think, shouldn't know.
I agree.
Well, you've got to go in up the road that says no through road, because we've got to sit in the car and get a shot of you going up the road. So you've got to go in. You've got to be the guinea pig. But you're a brave man, Alex, aren't you?
No problem, yeah.
So that's cool. I wouldn't ask a man who wasn't as brave as you.
All right, it's no big deal. I'm just gonna go in and make sure everything goes good. My only concern is figuring out the right type of baggage to carry this in, also still shot can.
Well, I personally would recommend that you wired yourself up with your what's it called?
Hidden camera.
Yeah, your hidden camera that's in the shape of a pager.
Problem is, we got some stuff on it last night. We checked it out, but it's very unwieldy, not trustworthy.
Right.
If I can just get in the woods with this, it's over.
That's true.
And even if I'm going early now. I'm probably going about 3:30 with Mike, and we'll just hang out inside in case they throw me out. I'm still getting back on the property.
Oh, so you're gonna go in way before Rick gets here?
Yeah.
Ah, okay. Well, cool. Well, we'll just sit in the car.
But I mean, you understand why? Not because I want to hang out in there all day. It's because I've got to get in. Because if they catch me, then I'm gonna got to sneak back in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I will not be stopped.
You know, I went with Big Jim Tucker from the Spotlight to a Bilderberg meeting last year, but that was my first time, and we got chased away by men in dark glasses, and you know, I was a bit scared then, but I feel safe with you, Alex.
Well, Tucker's a good rider.
Oh yeah, I like Tucker.
It was the night of July 15th, 2000. Mike Hansen and I were about to attempt the first ever successful infiltration of the Bohemian Grove. Others have tried and failed. No one has ever actually made it in and out with video evidence. After careful planning, we decided the best tactic would be to insert ourselves about a half mile from the main entrance into the heavily wooded area, entering the gorge by stealth and getting into the main parking area. From there, we posed as Bohemian Club members, thus entering the inner sanctums of the New World Order.
That's perfect. Just like that. No, I got it, honey. It's a great one. Okay, here we go.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's good, Alex.
You be careful, baby.
Okay.
I don't want you to go in.
Shh. I'll be safe. Don't worry about it, guys. Come on.
Be careful, Mike. God bless.
Yeah, pray for us. Keep the evil off of us.
Be careful.
Yeah, let's go. Let's walk on up here for a second. When's the next shuttle coming?
We're in. Can you talk?
Well, we're inside the Bohemian Grove. We're actually not inside yet, Mike.
Well, we're in the parking lot. That's pretty.
Yeah.
Aren't they the biggest? Oh, they are. They're the biggest, like, living thing, I think, aren't they?
Oh yeah, they're incredibly large. There's one up there that you can drive a car on top of one. You know.
On top of it,
yeah.
lying down.
Yeah. That you can actually.
Well, they used to have the one you could drive through.
That's also there. That's up there. Boy, it's nice when that cool wind hits you.
Oh, yeah.
Think we may make it.
Okay.
Yeah.
How much did the road cost?
This thing?
No, the road.
The rope.
The road. The road.
Rope.
That you
Oh,
bought?
that.
Oh, rope.
Oh, rope. It was 88. Yeah, I thought you said rope.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought rope and rope. You can't hear anything with this wind and the. Look at this thing's seen some years. Pretty nice, actually.
Yeah.
This is the oldest one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Other than maybe that little red one. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
I think when you go to heaven, they have buses like this
I think you're
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Let's see if we got one up here.
Yeah, is there another one coming?
No punch block.
Oh, good.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Good.
See you.
Your brother. Your father visited and all?
Yeah, yeah.
So that Marty thing was like.
We don't have time in the documentary to show you an entire tour of the 2,700-acre compound in the middle of the gorge. Besides the fact we didn't even have time to see but about 20% of it, in between dodging security personnel. Unfortunately, we were using digital tapes that were 1 hour. Several of the confrontations were not caught on tape. We had sheriff's deputies, Secret Service, you name it, question us on who we were. We just told them we were with the hillbillies. That's where the Bushes stay. You know, because we've got Texas accents.
Yeah, no,
Close back in the corner right over there.
Oh, there they are.
Yeah.
How's it going?
Good.
Oh, this was good. Oh. Here's just one of many signs sporting French with skulls adorned with other trappings of death. We also saw signage with Latin and other ancient languages. Now we're about to let you see a little bit of what's going on with the great owl.
There's the owl.
I guess you're going to find this.
I'm getting this. I'm getting bold. This is the owl. I'm getting this, Allie.
Let's get out of here.
I like that.
Here you can see the bottom of the stone owl with the altar and the eternal flame, a Aladdin lamp style urn that continually burns year around, we're told. And here's a side shot from about 30 yards away of Moloch, the Canaanite deity to which children were sacrificed to in Babylon. And yet another slowed down close shot. Again, the eternal flame burning, the altar, the bottom extremities of the 40-plus foot stone deity, and there is a shot of its head as well. Again, we've slowed down this video because we only actually had about 5 seconds of it on our hidden cameras, so you can have a chance to get a closer look at it. You will see it during the ceremony. Speaking of the ceremony, we were on the left-hand side of the lake, about 150 yards downstream beneath those large redwood trees. Much of the ritual you're going to witness took place on the right-hand side of the lake and at the northern tip beneath Moloch. Keep in mind the scale of the idol compared to those giant redwood trees. It's at least 45 feet tall. Now, the daytime vantage you're witnessing is basically the vantage that we shot the ceremony from at night. This is America, and it's been going on for 120-plus years in Northern California. This is not some new fad. We're talking about something deadly serious with its roots in ancient history.
Yeah, that's, we may have to...
A thirsty man. Look
I'm sorry. Quiet.
Reagan was a turning point for us. Didn't realize at the time it was. And
anytime I shoot.
Turning point for us.
Oh, really?
So many liberal Democrats in their time to change things around.
Morning.
It was all live?
Was it right?
No, it's probably as accurate as you know. Yeah.
We had already been questioned 3 separate times by the Bohemian Club's security, Secret Service, and Sonoma County Sheriff's Department. To evade discovery, we decided to try for one of the more remote areas of the camp, according to our map, the most southerly side, and a lookout point, an observation deck over the Russian River. While Mike Hansen was watching for the sheriff's deputies that were down the path and over the bridge in a guard shack, I began to shoot the video you just witnessed. After we turned the camera off, one of the Sonoma County Sheriff's deputies showed up and began asking us why we were filming. We calmly told him we were just sightseeing as members of the Bohemian Club. The point that has to be made here, though, is they do have hidden cameras. because there's no way that they would have been able to witness us videotaping from where the guard shack was located. And then upon walking back by the guard shack, we actually witnessed banks of television screens and wires leading up into the redwoods and disappearing. Also visible from the observation deck is the famous sunning area for the establishment lackeys and their pomps. Here you can see some of the fine carpeting out on the floaty. The long history of men enjoying themselves has even been written about in the gossip column of the San Francisco Chronicle, writing that a man on his own often gets invited back to the camp by gay bohemians. Even 100-year-old annals have admitted the homosexual activities. After escaping the sheriff's department, Mike and I traveled high into the hills to wait until dark and the beginning of the cremation of care ceremony. Before the cremation of care, all the Bohemian Club members begin a massive feast of revelry.
He's so pissed off at me.
After the feast, cult members travel from the main dining area under the trees out to the eastern side of the lake, where they congregate and prepare themselves to properly thank their deity. Again, the 3,000-plus-year-old Moloch. The occult activities are coming up. And then after the actual ritual, we're going to give you some more of the history surrounding it. But first off, I wanted to draw your attention to the program that was given out to the spectators or the viewers. I guess an occultist would call them novices, who actually watched as the priest and their supporters engaged in this ancient rite. Now, you're looking at a little demon called PJ that was on the front of the actual program. It's kind of an Hieronymus Bosch style. He's got a little broom and a dustpan, and he's sweeping something up. Now, even more shocking is the figure of a human body burning in the flames. In fact, I've shown it to people that are experts in anatomy, to actual doctors, and they say that the anatomical size is that of a baby or small child. Notice how large the cranium is in comparison to the torso, that is the ribs. Understand, ladies and gentlemen, this is from the program itself given out to the establishment lackeys witnessing these sinister activities. Remember, in Babylon and Tyre, they would throw their children into fiery pits. Look at the size of the hands compared to the rest of the body. Only children show these anatomical details. Now, of course, it's been airbrushed in, but it shows the psychology. Now, this is the only skull we actually caught on tape. We've blown it up for you over one of the major meeting houses. Of course, it's not a real skull. It was extremely oversized up on the signage. The point we're trying to make here is the entire compound was literally infested with symbols of death, skulls, owls. At long last, here it is, the cremation of care unveiled.
Let me get your coat. No? See it. You're going to keep it covered up.
As we sat there in the darkness, not knowing what we were about to see in the gathering crowd, suddenly, across the small lake, we saw a carriage with men in black and brown cloaks, robes, in front and in back, bearing a bound body. Remember, it was a hidden camera and at somewhat of an angle. something particularly pleasing was happening for the Bohemian Grovers with whatever developed with that crowd of men in black and brown and the bound body on the back of the buggy. They drove behind big black tarps they had hanging out of the trees. There was lots of smacking on lips and bizarre enjoyment by the crowd. We still haven't made out exactly what was going on, but that a real sacrifice may have actually been developing, according to some occult experts. All the time in the darkness across the small lake, the men in black were doing something behind the dark curtains hanging from the redwood trees. Then after about 10 more minutes of music, suddenly, all around the owl, activity began. Here is the main central part of the ritual.
The owl is in his leafy temple. Let all within the grove be reverent before him. Lift up your heads, O ye trees, and be ye lifted up, ye everlasting spires. For behold, here is Bohemian shrine, and holy are the pillars of this house. Weaving spiders, come not near.
Hail, Bohemians, with the ripple of waters, song of birds, such music as inspires the sinking soul, do we invite you into midsummer's joy. The sky above is blue, sown with stars. The forest floor is heaped with fragrant drift. Evening's cool kiss is yours. The campfires glow. The birth of rosy-fingered dawn. Shake off your sorrows with the city's dust and cast to the winds the cares of life. Let memory bring back the well-loved names of gallant friends who knew and loved this grove. Dear boon companions of the long ago. Aye, let them join us in this ritual. Not a place be empty in our midst. O beauty's vassals, who hold in this gray autumn of the world her springtime in your heart, attend our tale. Gather, ye forest folk, and cast your spell over these mortals. Touch their world-blind eyes with fairy unction. Open their eyes of fancy. Blow all the memories of yesterday and seal the gates of sorrow. It is a dream, and yet not all a dream. Joel Kerr and all of his works are but a dream. As vanished Babylon and goodly Tyre, so shall they also vanish. But the wilding rose blows on the broken battlements of Tyre, and walks rends the stones of Babylon. For beauty is eternal, and we bow to beauty everlasting. For lasting happiness, return to one alone, and she surrounds you now. Great nature, refuge of the weary heart, and only balm for breasts that have been bruised. She hath cool hands for every favored brow, and gentlest silence for the troubled soul. The counsels are most wise. She healeth well, having such ministries as calm and sleep. She is ever faithful. Other friends may fail, but seek ye her in any quiet place. Smiling, she will rise and give to you her kiss. so must become his children. Little children that believe nor ever doubt her beauty and her faith, nor deem her tenderness can change or die. Bohemians and priests, the desperate call of heavy hearts is answered. By the power of your fellowship, dull care is slain. His body has been brought yonder from the funeral pyre to the joyous pipings of a funeral march. Our funeral pyre awaits the corpse of care. Very young.
Here you have the boatman, his face was painted up like a skull, bringing the bound body across the water. Again, we'll have enhanced video of this later. And let's see if you can pick up all of the different occultic meanings in the speeches you're about to hear.
Across the shadowy tide, and all the ancient majesty of death, dull care, arch enemy of beauty. Not for thee the tender tribute or the restful strain. Fire shall have its will of thee, and all the winds make merry with thy dust. Bring fire!
When will ye learn that me ye cannot slay? Year after year ye burn me in this grove, lifting your puny shouts of triumph to the stars. But when again ye turn your faces to the marketplace, do ye not find me waiting as of old? Fools to dream ye conquer care!
Nay, thou mocking spirit, it is not all a dream. We know thou waitest for us when this our sylvan holiday has ended. We shall meet thee and fight thee as of old, and some of us prevail against thee, and some thou shalt destroy. But this too we know. Year after year within this happy grove, our fellowship bans thee for a space. thy malevolence which would pursue us here has lost its power under these friendly trees. So shall we burn thee once again this night, and in the flames that eat thine effigy, we shall read the sign, Midsummer sets us free.
Ye shall burn me once again! Not with these flames, which hither ye have brought from regions where I reign. Ye fools and priests, I spit upon your fire.
Thou, prince of all mortal wisdom, thou of Bohemia, we beseech thee, grant us thy counsel. Thank thee for thy adjuration. Begone, dull care. Fire shall have its will of thee. Begone, dull care. And all the winds make merry with thy dust. Hail, fellowship's eternal flame. Once again, midsummer sets us free.
Now we're going to get to some enhanced video, and we'll go play-by-play through some of the more occultic statements, like we shall read the sign in your burned effigy, the bound body. That's exactly what the Druids actually did. They would roast cats, goats, oxen, horses, and watch the pain of how they died, and from this extract some type of mystical energy force or power, and also be able to tell the future.
Owl of Bohemia, we beseech thee, grant us thy counsel.
Upon further research of the ritual you've just witnessed, it becomes clear. It is a mixture of the Babylonian Canaanite cult of Moloch, fused with ancient Druidic rites, where you have the female side of Satan, which they first call out to in the she, and then towards the horn god with the he, mixed with Masonic rites from Scotland. It's very likely that many of the 1,500 to 2,000 member crowd had really no idea what they were actually watching because it was thinly veiled. Here we have some more enhanced video as the boatman, again with his face painted up like a skull, pulls his boat across the small lake towards the high priest with the red of his cloak visible, with his hand outstretched as if he is pulling the damned soul towards him as they throw off their cares, their conscience for what they have to do in the world. Also, you have the arrangement of the circle of higher level priests around him, the high priest in lighter colors, and then the outer rings of red, and then those in black. This is consistent with the darker workings of the occult, not just with the Western countries, but also worldwide. Now, when you see that black edge coming to the field, that's because we zoomed in on the video, and many times the picture was almost out of the screen, so that's the edge of the field or the view of the camera. We'll get back to more enhanced video of the ritual here in just a minute. But remember PJ, the little demon down in the corner, the left-hand corner of the program, sweeping up the ashes with little horns? And how can you forget this? The image of a human body burning on the altar. Again, this is what they were handing out to those that were witnessing these macabre activities. But again, from Babylon on into ancient England, the word bone fire, meaning human sacrifices being thrown into fiery pits, turned into today's bond fire. After the sacrifice, members of the cult would sweep up the ashes of the victim and use them in future rituals. One of the things that is extremely obvious by looking at the program handed out to Bohemian Club members is the person creating the program had a deep understanding of the occult.
Malevolence which would pursue us here has lost its power under these friendly trees. So shall we burn thee once again this night, and in the flames that eat thine effigy, we shall read the sign, Midsummer sets us free.
You shall burn me once again! Not with these flames, which hither ye have brought from regions where I reign. Ye fools and priests, I spit upon your fire.
Thou, Prince of all mortal wisdom, Owl of Bohemia, we beseech thee, grant us thy counsel. O great Owl of Bohemia, we thank thee for thy adjuration. Begone, dull care. Fire shall have its will of thee. Begone, dull care. And all the winds make merry with thy dust. Hail, fellowship's eternal flame. Once again, midsummer sets us free.
There you see the funeral pyre burning with the effigy of a human, or it could be real, ladies and gentlemen. There's been a lot of strange going-ons in that area of Northern California, but this is what the establishment is into right here in America, the cremation of care. And this was July 15th, 2000. These people are deadly serious, those taking part in the ceremony. Another point, the pyrotechnics you're seeing going off were being released from beneath little wrought iron crosses about 1.5 feet tall. Also, notice the screams of pain coming from the sacrifice.
Begone, dull care. Fire shall have its will of thee. Begone, dull care. And all the winds make merry with thy dust. Hail, fellowship's eternal flame. Once again, midsummer sets us free.
One of the facets of the ritual that goes deeply into the occult, again, we've already mentioned the Druids at their bonfires or bonfires throwing bodies into fiery pits after ritually cutting their hearts out or slitting their throats. They talk about reading the sign in the burning effigy, reading the sign. Again, research your history books on the occult, even the Encyclopedia Britannica on what the Druids would engage in. This is just unbelievably macabre and evil.
So shall we burn thee once again this night, and in the flames that eat thine effigy, we shall read the sign.
Well, we're going to confront George Bush on Bohemian Grove. George Bush Jr., they've been announcing on CNN, MSNBC, on television last night and today. For the first time in history, they're admitting it, why the vice presidential decision was made at Bohemian Grove. George Bush Sr., the former president, and Colin Powell and others. So now they're just throwing it in everybody's face. We've broken the story over a week ago. July 15th, we were in Northern California. They're trying to ignore it. George Bush is down here at the governor's mansion across the street from the Capitol, about to announce Dick Cheney as his vice presidential running mate. We're going to go blow the party for him and get the information out to people. We're not going to stop. We're getting in their face. I want to make it clear that I'm neither Republican nor Democrat. But the facts speak for itself. George Bush Sr., Jr., even their grandfather Prescott Bush were all members of the Bohemian Club. So we dropped by to, well, let them know that we're fully aware of their activities.
This is massive. This is how George Bush dresses up, right here. We got him on tape. This is how they dress up, right here, in red and black robes. A little more pointy, though, like the Klan. We've got him on tape. This is how George Bush dresses, right here when he's in the Bohemian Grove. This is how he dresses. We've already put it on television. Absolutely disgusting. George Bush isn't a conservative. He's not for family values. He is nothing but a Luciferian twit. A Luciferian twit, Bush. You may think you can feed on the human population. We say no to you. We're on the march. The empire's on the run. Long live the Constitution and death to the New World Order. We stand firm. We stand strong for America against your evil, Bush. And we're going to get this story out, and we're going to continue to push it because the truth will not be hidden. That you are part of a 3,000-plus-year-old devil cult for the Al Moloch from Babylon as well as Tyre. We have the high priest admitting all this. We have it on videotape. It is documented. It is documented. A Luciferian devil worshiper. Already people all over Austin are talking about it. We're not afraid of you. We're not afraid of your minions. In fact, we're waking your minions up every day with the hardcore evidence. We know your father met 11 times with Bill Clinton in 91. The whole thing was stage managed. We understand you've been helping to sell this country out, Bush. And we're going to expose you and your Luciferian rights. We have the videotape. This is a massive story. One of the stories of the century. One of the stories of the century. How you had the Luciferian Pope for 121 years in Northern California. I went inside for the cremation of care. I witnessed the entire debacle. Many of these Secret Service agents have been in. No doubt. Protecting these people inside of this system.
There had to be, in my belief, an occultist, a deep occultist, who designed each of the elements of this ceremony. It wasn't just a bunch of guys sit together at a bar and said, hey, let's have a good time, the cremation of care, and why don't we do this or that. I believe it was purposely designed, each element in its turn, for what they did. No doubt about it.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've been watching Dark Secrets inside Bohemian Grove. The facts we've shown in this film are absolutely documented. I would only hope that the people of the world realize the organized evil we're dealing with at almost every level. Republican, Democrat, you name it. They're all working on the same team. Ladies and gentlemen, it's called world government, the New World Order, dehumanization. It's not a joke. It's deadly serious. Unfortunately, they've been breeding societies to think everything's a joke. I'm here to tell you truth is stranger than fiction.
It was 6 in the morning. I got a knock on my door, a really loud knock, and I thought it was my dad who had locked himself out or something. So I opened it, and it's the LED flashlights and the really obnoxious bulletproof vest and the dragging me out into the cold when I'm in my pajamas. That was not fun. They seemed pretty shocked by the sarcastic, belligerent, angry teenager that they dragged out of bed that day. I don't know if it's just that I was 19 or that I was a girl, but they didn't expect this. "10,000 angry kids, whoever they are, they scared the shit out of some people those days. They scared the shit out of the powers that be. And that's why this is being investigated. That's why I'm under indictment. That's it. Because between the days of December 6th and December 10th, 10,000 angry people proved to the government that their regulations, their ideas, their view of PayPal, their view of WikiLeaks, their view of the Afghan war and Egypt and Tunisia and Libya, it didn't fucking matter. Their opinion no longer mattered because someone was out on the internet kicking ass.
The computer hacker group Anonymous is claiming tonight that it took down the website of the Federal Appeals Court in San Francisco this afternoon.
They took down Senate.gov servers. They've taken down HB Gary. Sony's claiming they did $150 million worth of damage.
So many confidential files that tonight, because of these hackers, can be in the hands of anyone.
Visa, MasterCard, the PayPal situation.
The criminals who hacked into Sarah Palin's private email.
The Church of Scientology says Anonymous is a cyber terrorist group of religious bigots.
Anonymous and this other group called Lulz Sec. They seem to be wanting to prove a point.
Anonymous kind of was like the big, strong, buff kid who had low self-esteem. And then all of a sudden punched somebody in the face and was like, holy shit, I'm really strong. And Anonymous calls itself the final boss of the internet. And sometimes it proves to be really fucking true. If you are going to violate the freedoms of the internet, you certainly better watch the fuck out.
They are kind of the rude boys of activism. There's a real rough edge to them, which I think also is one reason why they garner so much love and hate from people, too. They represent a certain sort of chaotic freedom.
Individual, young, nameless, faceless folks are having geopolitical impact. I mean, it's both exhilarating to realize that and terrifying to realize that. It kind of depends on how that power is wielded.
We are legion. We do not forget. Expect us.
We stand for freedom. We stand for freedom of speech, the power of the people, the ability for them to protest against the government, to right wrongs. No censorship, especially online, but also in real life.
We have members throughout society and all stratas of it worldwide. Yet we have no leadership.
It's one voice. It's not individual voices. That's why we don't show our faces. That's why we don't give our names. We're speaking as one, and it's a collective. Good timing.
I would love to live in a country where the government fears its citizens and not the other way around. But right now, plenty of anonymous actors are in hiding because of fear of reprisals by the government. I've been called many things. There's unpatriotic.
That we're just a bunch of children sitting in our parents' basement.
I got called a terrorist sympathizer. We've been called kids, we've been called cyberbullies, we've been called hooligans, and you know, sometimes those words aren't entirely unfair, but this is a serious political movement.
No one, you know, in the general public really seems to get it. What they don't seem to get is that the ability for Anonymous to be everything and anything is its power.
Anonymous is a series of relationships. Hundreds and hundreds of people who are very active in it and who have varying skill sets and who have varying issues they want to advance and who are collaborating in different ways each day.
They're a little bit like a prism or kaleidoscope. They've got many different facets and many different sides. Of course, when you spend enough time with them, you start to get a sort of feel or texture that's not just random, right? Yet it's very multifaceted, very rich, which does span from the quite lighthearted to the very, very serious.
Bob Dylan had a line in a song just saying, to live outside the law, you must be honest. They might do something which isn't technically correct, maybe it's not legally correct, but they're doing it for purposes that in their minds at least are ethical.
People who know what they're doing, who share an ethos, who have a commitment to exposing and humiliating the man, who have a very low tolerance of lies and what they perceive as evil on the part of overweening power structures. They share information, they share tools and techniques, and they are currently having a very good time.
The hacker culture, as we know it, really sprang from one place. It was MIT, and it was specifically the people in the Model Railroad Club, the Tech Model Railroad Club.
Hacking originated as humorous pranks. When the guys at MIT put a Volkswagen up on top of the dome of the building, and people woke up and saw the car up there in the morning, or they measured a bridge by the body lengths of somebody. I would say his name was Brian, and discovered the bridge over the Charles River was, 822 Brians. These are funny things. That's where hacking originated, and it migrated into engineering and computer communities. It's witty, it's pranks.
Basically, Microsoft and Apple both got their entire start off computer crime. Bill Gates stole pretty much all of MS-DOS. Steve, Jobs, he was creating boxes to defraud the phone company,
I always saw hacking as implicitly political. But hackers, whether they're conscious about it or not, whether they're explicit about it or not, make a statement about how we should treat information. And some years after my book came out, one of the people I wrote about, Richard Stallman, got very publicly and explicitly political about open software. He believed that software should be free. Free as in freedom, not free as in beer, as he put it there. Behind it, whether misguided or not, there's a political impulse.
Hacktivism was a term coined by a group called Cult of the Dead Cow. The Loft had an interesting relationship with the Cult of the Dead Cow. There was 3 members that were in both organizations. And we kind of kept like the serious security research that they would do under the Loft name. And if they were doing some sort of just goofy stunt-like things, they would do it under the Cult of the Dead Cow name. Because the Cult of the Dead Cow was really kind of sort of like a propaganda type of organization. They had a guy who was the minister of propaganda. They're kind of merry pranksters. Like, everything they did was completely over the top. They would dress up like Mr. T sometimes. They would do rap songs at DEF CON, like a rap performance. One of the guys there, I think his name was T-Fish, short for Tweety Fish, coined the term hacktivism because he saw one of the things his group was doing, which he called hacktivism, was writing software that people in other countries could use to communicate securely, even if their government was spying on them. So the principle was really, it was freedom of expression. It was everyone should have access to the internet. Everyone should be able to communicate and get their message out on the internet. Even more important in countries where there was repressive regimes, that if you said something against the regime, they would come and take you away, and you weren't saying it anymore.
A good place to start are with what has often been called virtual sit-ins, which use the tactic of a denial-of-service attack.
Denial of service has been around for a long, long time. The equivalent of like if you for some reason wanted to disrupt a bus service, right? You can hire 1,000 extras to all go and like line up at the bus station, right, and get on the bus. And so that anyone who was really trying to get on the bus couldn't do it, right? It's as simple as that. When you stop trying to visit, website goes back up, no permanent damage.
And this tactic has been used by a number of different groups. Probably the most famous is the Electronic Disturbance Theater. Another really interesting case happened in Germany, where a group of activists got together who wanted to protest the fact that the airline Lufthansa were using their planes to deport immigrants, and they would take down the site. And in fact, eventually the German courts ruled that this was a legitimate form of protest.
From airport security to subway bag checks, there's no question it's a new world post 9/11.
It's worse now for humans post 9/11 because intrusion and surveillance, which is always going to be misused by those who can misuse it, has created a different kind of society in which freedom to move unobserved is a privilege only of the rich. Privacy is a privilege only of the rich. Hackers see the technology giving them sanction to buy that privileged exclusion as well. Intrinsic to the technology is the power to self-transcend and get out of the hump of the bell curve and move forward to a par with the masters of society and do battle with them on an equal level playing field. That's activism.
Anonymous grew out of what's known as 4chan. And essentially, this is just a website where people can upload images and you don't actually give your name. It's just sort of anonymous.
When you look at 4chan, you're often surprised because it looks like a site from like 1995 or something. The idea is very simple. You post a comment and you post a picture. And you can post under your name or anonymously. And it's separated into boards about particular topics. So there's a topic on anime, there's a topic on weaponry. There's like a 4chan board for origami, and you just upload interesting pictures of origami. And then there was a group called the B board, which essentially was for like anything goes.
The first time anybody goes on B, it's kind of an instant revulsion. Because there's never a time that you go on there where you don't see something horrible. That instantly puts off a lot of people.
The idea is post something that can never be unseen. Half of the posts on B are there specifically to make people not want to come back to B.
Have you ever read Lord of the Flies? 4chan, and especially B, is Lord of the Flies. Except some of them aren't 16 anymore, they're just allowed to act 16.
It's what you get when people are allowed to express themselves with absolutely no restriction whatsoever. It's the kind of sum of human imagination when people can get together and think together without any limits or parameters.
It's the most vile, disgusting, and funny thing on the internet.
4chan was founded by Chris Mootpool when he was very young, maybe 15, in the early 2000s. He started 4chan because he was a big fan of Japanese animation.
Christopher Mootpool is the sweetest kid you've ever met in your life. He's small and he's got these sort of like tiny features, and he runs the most disgusting website in the world.
What I think is really intriguing about a community like 4chan is just that it's this open place. As I said, it's raw, it's unfiltered, and sites like it are kind of going the way of the dinosaur right now. They're endangered because we're moving towards social networking, we're moving towards persistent identity, we're moving towards a lack of privacy, really.
The B board, that's the exact opposite of Facebook. Facebook, like, you're supposed to be like who you are, and there's sort of one model, which is that like you're friends with people, right? In 4chan, you're totally anonymous nobody. And anonymous speech is, a lot of it's ugly, but not all of it is, right? It is actually sort of a place where people can be honest.
One of the important things about 4chan is to have a thread that really explodes and lasts for a long time. If it doesn't, then it disappears. It's a site that's not archived. So it creates conditions for anything that grabs attention at some level. And so humor and grotesqueness as a result are quite good for that.
I'd rather just be referred to as anonymous, I guess, in the interviews, because
I have some docs out on me. 4chan's just where I went to. I grew up on it and I lived there. That's just what I did for fun. It takes a thick skin to enjoy it. But, you know, as long as you're not offended, you'll occasionally come into something really cool or really creative on 4chan. I think the most interesting thing about it is how you can watch memes evolve. You'll see something posted one day, and then a week later it's got 50,000 derivatives of it. A meme is basically just an idea. It's kind of like a gene, but in the realm of the idea.
A lot of the great internet memes that we all know and love, you know, lolcats, right? You know, little cats doing funny things, and then they have, you know, Icon has cheeseburger, right? All that stuff seems to start in this like petri dish that is 4chan b-board.
Say it publicly and your insane chocolate rain.
Name any meme from the last about 6 years, and I'll bet you either in its first posting ever was on 4chan, or at least one of its earliest revisions that became what it was on 4chan.
I can see the food situation is so we'll be on our way.
It's basically the best breeding ground for internet culture, and as far as I'm concerned.
With your neighborhood insurance rates, chocolate rain.
4chan is also very known for acts of trolling.
Trolling is a fucking art. Trolling is getting the person you're talking to get as pissed off as they possibly can, and for no reason except for your own enjoyment. Maybe you're trying to illustrate a point, but it's mostly for your own enjoyment.
For them, it's funny that like people think the internet is serious business, and if people think the internet is serious business, it's a troll's job to make their life terrible.
The idea of anonymous came initially as a joke. I mean, somebody suggested that what if the whole site, what if 4chan, what if B was just one person? And what if that's just one guy called Anonymous sitting somewhere, and you're just reading all these posts by one guy? And it kind of looked like that from the outsider's perspective. I mean, there's no way to tell the difference. It might as well be one guy.
Fox News did a very famous segment about it.
They call themselves Anonymous. They are hackers on steroids, treating the web like a real-life video game, sacking websites, invading MySpace accounts, disrupting innocent people's lives. And if you fight back, watch out.
Destroy. Die. Attack. Threats from a gang of computer hackers calling themselves Anonymous.
I've had 7 different passwords, and they've got them all so far.
Anonymous hacked his site and plastered it with gay sex pictures. His girlfriend left him.
She thought that I was cheating on her with guys.
As long as I can think back, Anonymous have done some pretty off-color things in the name of getting cheap laughs, you know. But, I mean, that's part of the culture.
They get what they call lulz.
Lulz is a corruption of LOL, which stands for laugh out loud. Anonymous gets big lulz from pulling random pranks. For example, messing with online children's games like Habbo Hotel.
Habbo Hotel was this online community where you had an avatar and you walked around and talked to other people. It was kind of like an early version of, you know, World of Warcraft or Second Life or any of those virtual worlds. What the people on B did was invade Habbo Hotel, created, you know, thousands of avatars. They all had this one uniform of a black guy with a big afro wearing a black suit. And so there would be thousands of these people, black guys, black suit, you know, huge afro, walking around this world, and they would do things like form a swastika out of themselves. And I think that was a real landmark because it was when they were able to see that, you know, they can use their numbers to do something really interesting and really disruptive.
So we blocked the entrance to their pool, and that just pissed them off so fucking much. It was fucking beautiful. That was fucking just wonderful. Wonderful times. Those kids love that pool. They love the shit out of their pool.
The goal was actually to offend everyone, simply because the idea that we could offend you by drawing a little shape on the screen was stupid to the people involved in it. They were like, really? You're going to get that mad over us just drawing this on the screen? Wow, well, you need to refocus a little on life, because this should not be upsetting you that much.
Barrett Brown. I'm the director of Project PM and former operative with Anonymous. We were targeting furries, which were a subculture of people, of course, who, a lot of people on 4chan find irritating by virtue of their being irritating. A furry is someone, generally a male who's autistic in his 20s, who identifies with animals and oftentimes has sexual attraction to other people dressed as animals. There's diaper furs, furs who enjoyed wearing diapers, baby furs who enjoyed thinking themselves as a baby. We had furry infiltrators, people trying, we had secret groups. Mine was called the Illuminati/I/Illuminati, and we were, our goal was to wreak as much havoc as possible because it was stupid. There's a point, when I was, otherwise, seemingly respectable writer, in 2007. My first book had come out like that, but I spent my evenings on Second Life, that big, virtual world, riding around in a virtual spaceship with the words faggery daggery do written on it, wearing afros, and dropping virtual bombs on little villages at concerts, and waving giant penises around. And that was the most fun time I've ever had in my life.
All these different organizations online, whether it's 4chan, or just any website, there's typically a community aspect to it. This is where people have their social relationships. This is where their friends are. This is where they have a creative outlet. And so all those aspects are going into groups like Anonymous, where people feel like they're part of a bigger thing and they're able to express themselves within that group.
There were certain words, certain phrases, certain ways people respond to things, certain images that were posted that created a pattern, and that pattern was, I guess, the origin of what is now Anonymous.
It's like Freemasons with a sense of humor, and so much as they have this common symbology, and one of their chief joys, which is kind of wrapped up in power and secrecy, was the fact that they could recognize each other by referencing these symbols, referencing these phrases. Over 9,000.
It's over 9,000!
I lost my iPod. Mudkips, anything involving mudkips. So you have this weird sort of international culture developing with people, across the world, wherever they may be.
In late 06 and, into early 07, there's a bit of a sea change where instead of just posting a bunch of content or randomly saying we're going to go over to some website and post a bunch of dirty comments against someone, it becomes a little more organized.
Welcome to the Hal Turner Show.
They went after a guy named Hal Turner.
I am being discriminated against because I'm white.
Hal Turner was a neo-Nazi who was, big online and had a podcast.
I think that the 14th Amendment was not ratified properly, and I think, therefore, it is still okay to have Negroes as slaves in America.
The first time I heard about Hal Turner is he was knocking somebody on 4chan. He was just being a major dick to a relatively known user. And for the fun of it, we started trolling him. And then I guess we kind of figured we had a moral high ground, which allowed us to get people on our side. But he was a fucking neo-Nazi. That's not okay to be in modern society. You're not allowed to do that. And there's a million neo-Nazis out there. But he started picking on our dudes, so we had to go to our dude's fucking defense. And it just so happened that he was a neo-Nazi, so that's a bigger reason that he's a fucking dickface.
I'm like, yeah, screw that racist son of a bitch. Let's do this, So I joined in, and I made some of the phone calls, and, I played around on the chat thing on his website and posted in the threads and whatnot.
Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hola, Hal. This is Pedro.
Spick, don't
San
call.
Diego.
Don't call my radio show anymore, you filthy spick animal.
The college that I
You're
go
on the Hal
to
Turner Show.
has begun an integration program where they try and purposely lower standards to bring more blacks and quote unquote diversify the campus. And by the end of the next 5 years, they intend to bring over 9,000.
He was just a horribly racist radio personality who seemed to handle it well when you called in. Like, he could handle being berated by Anonymous. And that made it very interesting. It made it a bit of a challenge. It wasn't some guy who just either crumbled or stopped answering the phone. It was a guy who would yell back.
I don't see where you're going with this.
Where I'm going is, I believe Barack Obama is genetically incapable of exercising the power necessary to govern the most complicated nation on earth. That's where I'm going with this. And I think part of the reason he's incapable of doing it is because of racial genetic inferiority. Is that clear enough for you?
No, you changed the subject again.
Wait a second, you asked
Hal Turner
me...
wasn't the first, like, actual person that, you know, Anonymous had caused trouble for, but the circumstances ended up being significant. They DDoS'd his website, stuff like that, costing him thousands of dollars, bandwidth fees.
We DDoSed him, which is overflowing his server with packets and fake information. And then we kind of trolled him in real life. We sent countless pizzas to his house. We signed him up for escorts on Craigslist. We sent a bunch of pallets of industrial materials to his house, which he ultimately had to foot the bill for. And basically we destroyed his ability to pay for his radio show, and that took him off the internet. He was super pissed.
And then they ended up getting some real hackers to help them out. Like, this wasn't sort of pranks. They actually were able to get into Hal Turner's private servers and his mail servers and find some interesting emails that he was serving as an FBI informant, which, if you're a right-wing neo-Nazi, is not a good thing to be.
And obviously him being an FBI informant, and also his reaction, his sort of douchebaggy reaction to the raids, damaged his credibility within the white nationalist scene, which is a shame.
Hal Turner's gone. He's been prosecuted by the feds for threatening judges.
It wasn't supposed to be different, but it ended up being different. People who observe Anonymous see this group called Anonymous going after this white nationalist and say, oh, hey, look, Anonymous must be some kind of activist organization. So by virtue of those people joining Anonymous, Anonymous becomes more of an activist organization. What follows is a period of confusion and anger in which, the original Anonymous people, the sort who want to keep Anonymous as this nihilist little, ridiculous group, are upset that now, that the most terrible thing on the internet is now becoming a force for good all of a sudden.
Anonymous has never been about getting media attention or getting all of this attention towards it. It means a community, a pretty sometimes insular community that just kind of kept to itself, made jokes and made content. But that was, of course, changed completely. Just turned completely on its head when Chinology started. Anonymous
began to become less of just a culture, people who wanted to perform pranks, and more of the internet's first army.
I'm Mike Vitale, and my handle is Seth Dude. Now, this is January 2008. Anonymous is strong now. We're not a little dinky fucking group anymore. This is millions of people worldwide, and we're watching. And then Scientology stepped in with a big target on its chest.
A video came out of Tom Cruise. It was supposed to be an internal Scientology video, talking about secrets of Scientology.
Being a Scientologist, when you drive past an accident, it's not like anyone else. As you drive past, you know you have to do something about it because you know you're the only one that can really help.
It talks about you're the only one who can stop, bad things from happening. And so this is kind of widely mocked online.
It circulated like wildfire.
There's nothing part away from me. It's just...
People found it humorous and goofy. And the Church of Scientology went into their legal mode, and they threatened websites with lawsuits if they didn't pull down the video.
Instantly, the Scientologists post a DMCA, Digital Millennium Copyright Act. And this is a way that if you own content, you can go to video sites, upload sites, and have your content pulled when someone uploads it illegally.
So Scientology's always at odds with the internet, always trying to legally bully people out of fucking them over on the internet. They always did that. And then here they are trying it again, but you know what? Anonymous saw that, and they said, oh, you guys just fucked around badly. You're trying to censor our internet. Are you trying to take a joke away from Anonymous? You don't do that.
What these people did, in this case, is Greg Hausch and these other people, was they decided, we can probably harness Anonymous in this case and target Scientology.
A few Anons, a few people on 4chan posted, hey, we should grab that video and post it on a few other sites. And I was one of the people in that thread talking about it, and we got the original source of the video by reaching out to the person behind the accounts and everything. We start posting it. The surprising thing was how fast they were DMCAing them on every site. It looked to us like they must have direct contact with the lawyers and the team who actually pulls videos at all of these sites. It was minutes and these things were falling down. And we're like, holy crap, that's messed up.
What followed was it's this term called the Barbra Streisand effect. And this video as they're attempting to suppress it, went everywhere. Like, everywhere you look on the internet, you were gonna stumble upon this video.
Actually, Gawker, the site that I worked for, was, I think, the first one to put it on the website, and we got in a huge legal battle with Scientology, who wanted us to take it down.
A guy joins the channel, and he says, you should all look at Gawker. So we go over to Gawker, and the strangest thing has happened. This big media company had the video up on their front page and basically had a comment underneath of it that stated very clearly that the FBI would have to come take their servers to get this video taken down, that they were sick of this abuse that was going on. That made us think, what have we gotten ourselves mixed up in here?
Scientology is an interesting target because in some ways it's the perfect inversion of what geeks and hackers value. At so many different levels: science fiction, intellectual property, discourses of freedom, science and technology. It's very proprietary, it's closed. And so in some ways, if you had something like a cultural inversion machine and you stuck geeks and hackers in there, you'd get something that looks a lot like Scientology. So it's quite offensive, and there's a real pleasure in attacking your perfect nemesis.
We're just such polar opposites, with them being secretive and us hating secrets, and them being so inclusive and us being, anybody could say they're anonymous, and most importantly, how fucking self-important they were. They thought they were fucking untouchable. They thought that they were like their own little church mafia and shit, And Anonymous will, it's like a play toy now. We're gonna make you guys look stupid as shit.
What really kind of dared us and set us off about Scientology is specifically the treatment of their critics. Anybody who says anything bad about Scientology is automatically some sort of criminal, some sort of crazy person, a drug addict. It's just that kind of mentality, that kind of, like, if anybody says anything bad about you, we're gonna fuck you over in the worst possible way. It resonated like this feeling of disgust within us. That was a big problem. That was the big problem. The censorship aspect of it. The audacity of this cult, this creepy cult, to go into our territory and tell us that we can't post this? No, fuck them. No, it's not gonna happen.
And people who knew what Anonymous was to begin with were like, oh my God, Anonymous is gonna go to war with Scientology. This should be really interesting. Especially because it's two weird ass groups. I mean, I've been an Anon for a long fucking time. I know Anonymous is really strange. They're weird, and the stuff we like is weird, and it's really not mainstream at all. Now you have Scientology, also really weird. A lot of crazy shit goes down. Anybody on the outside who's seeing this is going, let's watch these two retards fight. Like, both their pants are gonna fall down, they're gonna triple, and it's gonna hurt everybody, and it's gonna be hysterical. And what happened was all these people who were geared up, the infrastructure was built to war with other Anons, said, you know what, fuck it. Everybody's gonna get together and pound the fuck out of Scientology.
And then that's when 4chan kind of reared into action, really reared into action. And they started to troll the Church of Scientology. And this took the form of pranking the Dianetics hotline, ordering pizzas.
Every fax number we get, we're sharing them all. Every number we get, we send black pieces of paper on a loop until we sold their ink. I go to call them on the phone and it's busy. And that's their main fucking Dianetics hotline. Their Dianetics 800 number, you can't get through because Anons have completely fucking clogged it and just probably saying stupid shit. The whole idea was just you call them just to keep them on the phone. What's an Elron? How do I Dianetics my face? They were not expecting that, and they couldn't handle it.
I'm Brian Mettenbrink. I always liked anything technical, mechanical, anything sciencey, really. Computers do what you tell them to. They don't all of a sudden start doing weird stuff, and if they do, it's probably your fault. And I always like that, they're perfect, really, in a way. I had just gone to 4chan just on pure happenstance, and I saw a post about the Scientology thing, and I started looking up stuff, and I'm like, oh, this is actually for a decent cause. I think I'll, do this.
You started seeing all the stuff in B, and I saw the stuff in B then. Everyone's going to DDoS Scientology. Everyone's going to bandwidth rape them.
Anonymous Members have developed a distributed denial of service attack tool called low orbit ion cannon, which is taken from a computer game.
Low orbit ion cannon is what's called an end game weapon in Red Alert. All you had to do was literally follow instructions step by step. I downloaded a program that's free and legal for anyone to download and use. And I followed the instructions and I typed in www.scientology.org and I pushed go. And what it does is it tells Scientology.org, in this case, it tells them to send their website to my computer about, I think it was 800,000 times in a weekend. And I'm pretty sure I probably took it down myself a couple of times.
This tool is low orbit ion cannon, sometimes referred to as LOIC. I am actually not breaking any laws by using this tool against my own computer, 127.0.0.1, which is a non-routable address. But of course, if I were to have attacked one of those other bigger sites out there, I would have severely been breaking the law and would have been doing it in a way that was quite easy to track. You do it, you put in the site, you see that the IP is correct, you make sure that all these settings are good, and you hit the button, and off it goes.
It felt like you were making a difference. You know, just you yourself. And you didn't even have to leave your home, you know? You just sat at your computer and followed instructions and stood up for what you believe in, so to speak. You made your say in the world, and hopefully it turns out better for it.
Yeah, that was some really crazy stuff to watch. To be sitting there in front of a monitor and you have just information just flying in front of you, and it's this unseeable internet war.
And one of the guys said, we need to make a video. We have to make a video.
Hello, leaders of Scientology. We are anonymous.
When the video came out on January 21st, that was one of the first times that Anonymous as a culture started referring to itself as Anonymous as a movement, and declared that it was going to take down and destroy the Church of Scientology. That video probably changed everything.
Knowledge is free. We are anonymous. We are legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us.
It basically looked like if a computer was going to tell you that he was going to beat the shit out of you, this is what it would look like.
That one video, you really galvanized that moment of innovation. That's exactly like with that video, internet activism as it's known today was born.
What the video was saying was, it's over. You're not going to be able to follow people back to their house anymore with impunity. You're not going to be able to just issue a cease and desist letter to any reporter who wants to write some shit about you that you don't like. You know, that's done with. Every time you do that, Anonymous is going to hit you harder.
So we made a video named Call to Arms that said, we're going to the streets. Every major city of the world has a Scientology building.
Be very wary of the 10th of February. Anonymous invites you to join us in an act of solidarity. Anonymous invites you to take up the banner of free speech, of human rights, of family and freedom. Join us in protest outside of Scientology centers worldwide.
And you just see this consensus forming that it's going to happen. So we made the third video, the code of conduct. Don't bring weapons. Dress accordingly. Cover your faces, because they will try and find out who you are and screw with your life.
Rule number 17. Cover your face. This will prevent your identification from videos taken by hostiles.
Scientology has a history of harassing, stalking, and just generally doing horrible things to its critics. So people needed a way to hide their identities. A lot of people had very legitimate fears. They don't want to be followed home. They don't want to be stalked. They don't want to put their families and themselves in danger.
Everyone was going, well, we're going to wear masks. What's the only fucking mask that we all already know or have a joke about? And it's the Guy Fawkes mask. You see the movie V for Vendetta, you know, the ending scene where everyone's wearing the Guy Fawkes mask. That is very reminiscent of what Anonymous thinks Anonymous is. We wanted to represent anonymity in some way when it moved into real life. I think that the Guy Fawkes mask was one of the most natural things to happen. It is the idea that none of us are as cruel as all of us. You have this massive crowd of people who are anonymous that is going to fight against a bigger thing and win.
Even after watching the video, it's like, yeah, this is great, but who's actually gonna do it? Who's gonna step up? Are people actually gonna get out of their house? And I guess we were really affected by the stereotype of of that whole community, they're being internet nerds, that too afraid to leave their mom's basements. I figured maybe 15 nerds from every city somewhere might show up and wear their masks at a building for a while and leave.
No one thought that they were going to come out.
This is me on the way there. I haven't slept. I'm very fucking tired.
And I remember going to the park that day, and it's really fucking early in the morning, which I thought was a bad idea. And I'm smoking a cigarette, and I'm looking around like, where the fuck is everybody? There's nobody here.
So here I am, sitting in Bryant Park, waiting for the other announcers to show up.
I remember thinking like, oh fuck, like, am I gonna be the only one in the park? Am I gonna walk to Scientology with fucking 6 or 7 people? Which totally defeats the entire purpose of this, because now they could single me out, you know? Then I get up and I start walking around and I see there's a lot of green balloons over there for some reason. On the other side of the park, there was like fucking 200 people. There was Guy Fawkes masks everywhere. And I'm like, holy shit, this is huge.
There's a fucking lot of us. That's pretty good. I had no idea how many Anons there were until we started moving.
And it just fucking got bigger. I remember walking through Times Square, and everybody in Times Square was an Anon. Like, and you know, this is like a fucking 1,000 person per like fucking minute foot traffic area. And everywhere I'm looking, I'm seeing fucking Anon symbols. It was fucking wild. It was really wild.
So we start getting numbers in. And Sydney, we're thinking that it's going to be 50 people. And before 10 a.m., before even time, there's already 50 people there. And there's still streams of people walking down the streets. A couple hours into it, you know, because I didn't go to bed until 1 in the morning, you know, you're looking at Sydney as, wow, there's 250 people in Sydney. The cops are estimating higher than that for their reports. What just happened? Adelaide, Perth, and Melbourne happened. And, you know, over 200 at each of them. We nearly broke 1,000 leaving Australia. Now, the next protest was Tel Aviv, which had actually gotten its first Scientology building a week before this. There were Palestinians and Israelis at this protest, both holding their flags. And at one point, they actually switched flags and held up each other's flags and whatnot. It was awesome to see. I call our guy in London, Britanon, and I say, hey, what's going on there? And he's like, did you just get out of bed? I said, yeah, I haven't even turned on the computer. I just figured I'd call you. And he said, we've got 600 people, and the cops are really, really mad at me.
All the major cities were having hundreds of people come out. It's massive. Clearwater had like 300 people. I don't think anyone beat out LA. I think LA had over 1,000 people.
We are Legion!
The thing that happened was something completely different, and hundreds of people from every city just swarmed the streets. It was kind of overwhelming, a little even scary, but scary in a good way.
Soon, you know, we're at around the 10,000 mark, you know, and we were joking the whole time, over 9,000, you know, one of those memes. It was too surreal. It was not believable.
You go by what name?
We are Anonymous.
It was very impactful, especially after people saw the thousands of people showing up. This was it. We owned the world at that point.
You've got lolcats, and you've got rickrolling. You've got all these other things that Anonymous has been involved in. Then, you know, take us a month later, and, you know, 10,000 people were just in the streets. And in every major country in the world, in every major city in the world. And what the hell just happened? What changed? You know, who flipped the switch? The world looked very different to me at that point.
We all met each other. The idea of an Anon is you're fucking alone until you get to 4chan, you know, and then these people all think like you know? Then all of a sudden you're not alone. You are with fucking 500 others, you know, they all know the same jokes as you. They all clearly have similar interests as you. Here's your culture. You meet your own people finally.
immediately you felt like you were at home. If you were an Anon, you were at home. We all like spent years in the same place, looking at the same pictures, laughing at the same jokes. You know, we pretty much were already friends, even though we've never ever met. It was very happy.
It's perhaps a little surprising. It's not just preteens or teenagers. There's a far more even mix of males and females than you would imagine otherwise.
Everyone always figured Anonymous was a very male, thing, but it wasn't like that at all, There's some fucking hot girls come through. Like, there's some really, you'd be surprised.
And there were a lot of these so-called guys who weren't socially good. They were very awkward. They still lived at home at 23, half of them virgins. And I'll tell you, the amount of those people who got laid from these protests happening is in the thousands that would not have for years probably.
That's why those protests were so important. It was a chance to finally meet other people that were previously anonymous and unknown, and hence it was the moment of the end of their anonymity.
Scientology, they kind of fought back, so to speak. They posted stuff online.
While claiming they are peaceful, in less than 3 weeks, anonymous members made or encouraged 8,139 harassing or threatening phone calls, 3.6 million malicious emails, 141 million hits against church websites, 10 acts of vandalism, 22 bomb threats, and 8 death threats against members and officials of the Church of Scientology.
They basically antagonized, really, is what they did, which is really one of the things they're great at.
They wanted to find me. They did. They hired PIs.
They started taking pictures of us, threatening to sue us.
People were getting followed. People were getting followed home. It'd be a regular thing for someone to say, oh, I had to lose someone on the subway. I saw someone from the Scientology Center, and they were following me.
They would follow us to our houses, try to intimidate us, send us cease and desist letters.
They had a PI hand deliver a cease and desist letter from a very expensive lawyer. It was a double message there. It was a, hey, we know where you live, and we know your name, and here's something from our lawyer.
Just these old tactics that they used to fight the activism they faced before the internet just were completely ineffective against Chanology.
Most of the people who received them actually framed them and put them on their wall. I've seen multiple of them framed and put on the wall. Mine's sitting in my closet somewhere in a box. They don't care to actually use the legal system to get you thrown in jail. They care to use the legal system to get you to stop.
I did the whole low orbit ion cannon stuff, and then I pretty much just went about my life after that for probably, I think it's 6 months, and then the FBI showed up here at my parents' house where I wasn't, looking for me.
2 men got out of the car and took their jackets off and laid their guns on the front seat and came up to ask us if Brian was home, and explained that they were the FBI and they were looking for Brian, and I've never been so scared.
And then my parents directed them to where I was living, and they showed up and said, I'd like to have a friendly conversation with you, and I had the worst friendly conversation of my life. And we sat down at my dining room table, and they just started asking me questions, and I'm trying to figure out what they're here for, because I have no idea. And they eventually started asking me questions about Anonymous.
I was scared to death. I mean, my son is looking at 5 years in jail and a $100,000 fine.
I had no idea that it was any sort of this big of a crime to do what I did. I thought it was the kind of slap on a wrist, $200 fine type crime. So I actually told them that I did it at that point. Then it went from there. But yeah, I would have never ever believed that the maximum punishment for this was 5 years in prison. It was a very eye-opening experience. I had a little bit of trouble accepting it, knowing that I could go to prison for 5 years. Knowing that I would be in prison from age 20 to 25 for this, you know, I thought that was a little bit extreme.
I tell people it would be different if they drank and drove and killed somebody. But he didn't do that. It's hard to deal with, harder to deal with, because he didn't do that. He just pushed a button on his computer, and as he explained it to me at the time, it was like pushing the refresh button over and over and over and over 800,000 times. And it seems like such a little thing.
I did the second most damage is what Scientology said. I sent the second most out of everybody. So I got the maximum for my category, which was 1 year in prison and 1 year supervised release. I think, you know, the way I feel is for what I did was one of the most, like, lopsided punishments I've ever, like, read about or heard of. Yeah, I think it's ridiculous, especially the year supervised release where I can't touch a computer for a year. I'm not sure what that's supposed to solve, except make my life difficult. So that computer behind me back there, I could go back to prison if I went over and touched it. I can't knowingly associate with members of Anonymous.
They just made a big deal about Scientology as a religion and that this is America and you can believe in whatever you want to believe, and I'm pretty sure they actually compared me to like the KKK and the Nazis and stuff in the courtroom.
Yeah, it's a completely different issue. I'm very proud of what he did. He stood up for what he believed in, but that's never ever mentioned.
I never would even dream of hurting anybody. You know, it's just not me.
Prior to Anonymous, critics of the church still had to be very, very careful because of the aggressive lawsuits that were launched against academics, journalists, and other critics. I would say that era is over. And Anonymous, more than any other sort of intervention, is probably responsible for that change.
This actually caused a decent rift in Anonymous.
There was one big group, significant group of people who would say, this Chinology stuff, it's cancer, it's awful, it's bad, it's just bringing attention to us that we don't want.
The trolling isn't happening, we're not getting our jollies. Like, now this is all really serious and moral and somber, and like, well, you know, that's not what I signed up for, that kind of thing. And then there are the people who were on the other side who are going, well, I only signed up for the serious and somber. You guys, go away. This is, you know, and, you know, there became this very fierce clash of ideologies, and it was alien to us.
They decided, in their own words, which I was privy to because it was told to me, stop ruining our bad name. So to make Anonymous look bad, they go off and they post animated GIFs, animated images to epilepsy forums that are black and white, just strobing really quickly. So any of the epilepsy people on these support forums see it and they fall off their chairs, you know, in seizure. You start hearing this term moral fag. If you're not out there making epileptics have seizures, then you're doing it wrong. So you're a moral fag.
Which is what I am, a moral fag. Those who want to use Anonymous as, you know, as a tool for good in some sense. Rather than just doing what we used to do, which is to screw with video games.
One Anon said it well once. There is no leader. Their ops have momentary leaders, de facto leaders.
I like to describe this with the picture of a bird swarm. Everybody's flying very, very quiet. Suddenly one bird flies into the other direction and the mass fly into the same direction following that person. It's totally okay to say, I'm sorry, I don't take part. When Chinology was running full force, it was like a kid stretching for the first time and actually seeing the real power. It's the teenage period, actually, trying, Operation Pitstorm.
Operation Titstorm. Australia over the past couple of years has been relatively malignant in their attitude towards internet freedom compared to other Western countries. A guy named Tux wanted to attack the Australian government. in retaliation for upcoming internet censorship laws. And one of them involved banning pornography with women with small breasts for some reason. So that was the first time that Anonymous went up against the government. When they DDoS'd and took down several government sites, it was the first time that Anonymous was going up against a state.
If you had asked me all throughout 2008 and most of 2009, is the politics of Anonymous always going to be sutured and hinged to the Church of Scientology? I would have said yes. And it became unsutured, unhinged, when a different political wing was born in 2010. The Motion Picture Association had hired an Indian software firm to DDoS the Pirate Bay. And Anonymous, coming out of 4chan, DDoS, the Motion Picture Association of America, as well as then other groups like the Recording Industry Association.
It angered people for a lot of different reasons. I mean, obviously one of the reasons was that they were attempting to censor the internet. Another of the reasons, though, was that, you know, people in Anonymous had been arrested before for taking part in such attacks. Say on the Church of Scientology and other targets that there had been before. I think there was a big sense of the hypocrisy in it.
This was the moment a kind of networked kind of architecture was born, where there was a different node that was unrelated. Some people crossed over, and they were connected by aesthetics and by ethics, and yet this was a different ship that was sailing.
It is our task to find secret abusive plans and expose them where they can be opposed before they're implemented.
The interesting thing about someone like Assange is that he actually also sprang from, you know, a hacker culture. It's a mentality of spreading information.
Julian was Mendax. He was the greatest hacker that ever walked the face of the earth when I was a kid. I mean, they rumored he could move satellites around in space by hacking into NASA. I mean, you know, maybe it never happened, but I mean, it was, you know, it was a myth that kept young kids like me wanting to, like, you know, plug a computer into a modem and see if I can move some satellites around.
WikiLeaks is an instantiation of the hacker ethos. Truth wants to be free, and we want to liberate it.
WikiLeaks released a huge trove of diplomatic cables. There was a lot of controversy from every quarter of society.
The WikiLeaks website released nearly 400,000 secret U.S. files on the Iraq War late today. It was the largest leak of classified U.S. files in history.
The diplomatic cables show the U.S. is spying on its allies.
Lots of things which were understood in private and may have been not even talked about explicitly. Suddenly they're out there in the cold light of day, and it's going to make some governments and some individuals very uncomfortable.
He was showing the world a glimpse of how, you know, the powerful elite actually work. At least to some extent. I mean, these are fairly low-level diplomats sending messages back and forth, but it's a side of government you hardly ever see, and it's pretty eye-opening. And you know, once it's out, it's out. I think information wants to be free. And let's look at it. Let's analyze it.
It's important that we know such stuff. It's important that we know what our governments do, and if they don't tell us, then somebody has to.
There was one particular moment that really sparked the fire, and this was when PayPal, MasterCard, and Amazon pulled services for WikiLeaks.
So all of a sudden, there's no way to actually like process donations to WikiLeaks. And then people went and found like neo-Nazi groups. Visa and MasterCard were perfectly fine with you being able to, like, you know, PayPal being able to like make donations to them, but WikiLeaks, no.
You can pay the KKK, you can donate money to the Westboro Baptist Church with your PayPal and your fucking MasterCard, but you can't give any money to WikiLeaks. And I think WikiLeaks is doing a good thing. It's just a total hypocrisy. They got their little fucking banking mafia to fuck, you know, WikiLeaks over.
People were incredibly angry. There was a real sense of rage. I think there was a sense that WikiLeaks was exposing the lies that the government had told to the people, and that the government was desperately trying to make sure that those lies weren't exposed. And there was just an intense, I can only call it fury.
If you're a hacker, it's one of those John F. Kennedy was shot moments. Not to actually compare it to that, but it's one of those moments you always remember exactly where you were when you heard it. I mean, I just really never dreamed that they would have the audacity
Anonymous very quickly moves into an attack mode.
Anonymous DOSed PayPal. They were pissed.
Cyber protests, sit-ins, however you want to look at it. DDoS is a tool that is a big giant, it's like driving a finish nail in with a sledgehammer.
The numbers of participants were massive, massive. And they managed over the course of a couple of days to disable the websites of MasterCard and PayPal.
It was like watching the hack magician finally get a trick right, because you're not expecting it, and then it's magnificent. It was beautiful. Because what you had is people finally stood up for something. How long has it been since we had a huge, really relevant protest? I'm not talking Tea Party, I want to bring my guns in public. I'm talking 10,000 angry people said this is not right, and I want to do something about it.
Soon after, January 2nd, I believe, WikiLeaks was blocked in Tunisia. And Anonymous got wind of that. They then intervened, at first solely for the purposes of like stopping the kind of censorship that was happening. They did some DDoSing, and this was a time period where they were getting involved with what I would call non-internet-y social movements and building lines of solidarity.
My name's Pete Fine. You can call me an internaut or a hacktivist. Telecomics is an ad hoc cluster of volunteer net activists who have spent much of the last year trying to keep the internet running in the Middle East. During that time, we saw the Tunisian government not only censoring and filtering the internet, but also doing some kind of technical trickery to steal people's Facebook passwords and delete their posts and see who was posting what and, you know, fake posts, stuff like that.
Some Tunisian hackers came to us. They were members of Anonymous, and I didn't even know we had members of Anonymous in Tunisia, so it was a shock to me. And they had they had the keys to some parts of the kingdom, so to speak, when it came to the dictator in Tunisia. We went in on behalf of those Tunisian Anons, and we helped them get that and extract it, and then it went to WikiLeaks.
The Tunisians overthrew Ben Ali, who was kind of a repressive dictator. A revolution that was facilitated by the internet, by Facebook and by Twitter. Not caused by it. I mean, 50 years of dictatorship has caused the Arab Spring. But the internet has certainly been helping.
There's a video where they are thanking us for being involved, holding up a mask saying we were the only one who stood by their side. For me, it was awesome to hear that and to feel the connection.
The same group of hackers that target anti-WikiLeaks sites have now turned their attention to Egypt.
In kind of the lead up to the Egyptian revolution, we would tweet on people's behalf. We would get people from Egypt who were unable to access Twitter on their own on our IRC network, and we would take reports from them and tweet them out using our account to kind of help them get the word out about what they were experiencing.
Some of this shit is personal. And one of the things about the movement as a whole, when Egypt rolled around, is that Egypt broke us emotionally. Watching in real time with live feeds that we helped set up, Egyptians get massacred with machine guns. It was different, and I have never in cyber activism wept before. It's never bothered me like that. It's never been able to touch me the way Egypt touched me.
It was fucked up that we were watching people killed for no reason other than leaving their homes, that these people had every right to freedom, that they had every right to choose their government.
And then January 27th, January 28th rolls around, and the Egyptian government starts shutting down the internet. I mean, just for the whole country. The whole country. There's this fantastic traffic graph that you can see the traffic coming out of Egypt, and it looks like, you know, like this. Just totally stops.
And we were just shocked. We were just like, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck? To think that a country would completely cut itself off as much as it was able to from the outside world was pretty unthinkable. You know, we know bad things go on in the dark places.
And suddenly it got quiet. I remember that somehow burned into my brain that first Twitter was flooded and suddenly everything was quiet.
That's the kind of thing that could start riots. I think when Mubarak did what he did, I think it really upset people here as well as in the Middle East.
I put myself in their place, and I found myself in a desert of nothingness because he just wiped out everything that my world incorporated. That just showed me and everybody else that the same thing can happen at any time, at anywhere, in any government.
Anonymous and the people on the internet stood up and said, go fuck yourself. You want to shut down their internet? Fine. The people on the internet will show them how to turn it back on.
It's almost like the internet as an actual thing. It's like the internet is a living thing. It's like a conscious thing that gets up and says, no, you can't do that.
A lot of my friends helped with encryption, helped people on the ground in those countries validate SSL keys and certificates, and really showed them how to subvert their government and become free.
And then Telecomics started to tweet connections to the internet, dial-up connections.
In Egypt, the care package we put together included kind of our comms information, the ham radio and dial modem details. In total, we helped coordinate and run about 500 dial-up modem lines. We also Googled up treatments for tear gas and other kind of basic medical treatment and found folks who could translate that into Arabic. Sort of put this together in a nice one-page PDF and fax, and off it goes.
I think the most effective thing was shutting down government websites. We're taking your dictator's web pages down.
It is cyber warfare at that point. When you're dealing with a dictator like that that's killing people, all the gloves are off. We are going to not just take your websites offline, we are going to destroy your every communications. We are going to wreck you like a nation state would wreck you.
In Cairo, Egypt, the crowds are shouting and screaming.
President Hosni Mubarak has decided to step down from the office of President of the Republic.
When Mubarak left, it was a hell yeah moment. People can rise up, people can make a change. And I think for a lot of people in America, it was the first time they had seen people rise up and take down their government and say, we're sick of this shit. We're sick of the oppression. We're sick of living as slaves to your power.
We had Egyptians come thank us as we're doing this stuff, and I said to them, like, look, you guys just get our back if stuff goes down here.
Although it was awesome and it was one part we were fighting for me it was quite clear that it's not the end of the story. That it's not suddenly changing into rainbows and nine cats or whatever, but that we now have to watch even more.
The FBI is now investigating Anonymous, a loose collection of rogue, tech-savvy hackers credited with bringing down the websites of MasterCard and Visa last December.
So there were 40 raids back then. They seized computers, cell phones, and those kind of technical apparatus, sometimes including in the case of, a 19-year-old girl lived with her family, they took her parents' stuff too. There's always been a sort of cat and mouse dynamic, not just in relation to the feds, but also to these sort of groups that have appointed themselves as guardians of the Republic. And there's groups called like Backtrace Security, which is made up of a couple of deranged people who, I think for personal reasons, have grievances against Anonymous.
I've been threatened by people who are former Secret Service agents who now run private security companies.
Suddenly, on February 5th, a Financial Times article comes out that we all see. And it's quoting this guy named Aaron Barr, who's the CEO of HP Gary Federal, which is an intelligence contractor. And Aaron Barr is telling his Financial Times journalist, Joseph Min, that he's been secretly monitoring the AnonOps server where all this is going on, and has done so for several weeks, and using his own custom brand of information operations techniques, has managed to identify the alleged leadership of Anonymous, including 25, quote, lieutenants, unquote, some sort.
We have to see this document. Everyone wants to know. We don't need to destroy him. We don't need to destroy his company. We just need to see the document, and we'll decide what comes next after looking at the document. So they get it. It was unbelievably easy to get into that network.
And my name was on there as a screen name, and Greg Hausch was listed there by a screen name. The fact of the matter is, what he told Financial Times was everything he told them was demonstrably untrue, and very much hilariously so.
He had to be shut up. It had to be proven to the world that this guy was a retard and that his information was in no way valid.
Now, to put that in hacker terms, Anonymous is a hornet's nest, and Barr said, I'm gonna stick my penis in that thing.
In a mere 24 hours, he was owned, pwned completely by a small group of participants who basically went on a hacking rampage.
Faster than you can say, get these hornets off my penis. Anonymous took down Barr's website, stole his emails, deleted the company's backup data, trashed his Twitter account, and remotely wiped his iPad. And he had just reached the Hammam high level on Angry Birds.
The HB Gary hack brought about 70,000 emails.
Probably the most important ones had to do with a proposal that HB Gary had already formulated. It was packaged up as a nice PowerPoint presentation, kind of act as privatized agent provocateurs, where they were going to discredit WikiLeaks.
HB Gary was proposing submitting fake documents to WikiLeaks, and then when discovered as fake, the error could be called out and it would discredit WikiLeaks.
Right. So, so there's a lot of specifics I can't talk about. So let me try to answer that though in a general sense. Well, first of all, it's probably no surprise to anybody. I'm not a big fan of WikiLeaks. I think that the broad purpose of trying to get as much information, proprietary or classified information for the government, expose that, is an extremely destructive and dangerous purpose.
As Julian Assange had a few months before noted that they had information on a major bank showing wrongdoing, and Bank of America somehow knew it was them. And the proposals involved for Bank of America and the WikiLeaks problem, they entailed conducting information war on WikiLeaks and its supporters, creating dissension within WikiLeaks, DDoS attacks.
You also wanted to launch cyber attacks on WikiLeaks infrastructure to get information on document submitters.
Well, one thing I guess I want to make sure is clear is, you know, none of those activities had actually occurred. You know, there's in business, there's you know, when you start proposing or thinking about an idea, there's a brainstorming phase, and somebody says, well, what if, you know, what could we do? What's theoretically possible?
Well, still, this was an idea. This was proposed. This was something that you thought about.
Right.
They also wanted to go on a campaign kind of targeting Glenn Greenwald, who's a reporter for Salon, who's an outspoken kind of critic of the government and supporter of WikiLeaks.
It seems like you're trying to attack a journalist here.
Yeah, and I don't want to talk too much more about Glenn Greenwald, but other than, you know, what I previously said is, you know, there was never an intent to attack journalists, not on my part. You know, nor I guess I should say I should generalize that and to say that, you know, I would never just outwardly attack a journalist, other than if I felt that there was a journalist in my mind that was acting unethically. That, you know, that is that's a fair game for having a public discussion about.
They were walking a very fine ethical line at points, and in many cases, the mass opinion is, no, they stepped well past it.
I will not support broad theft of information released to the public, because that's nothing but destructive. if somebody has information that's been stolen from them, and whether or not WikiLeaks encouraged the theft of that, or whether or not it was just put in their lap, still they're threatening to release the information that is the private property of another organization. So your choices are to just allow that to happen, or to try to stop it. How offensive is too offensive? We've certainly seen a lot of strategy coming out of governments across the world now saying, publicly admitting that they need to develop better offensive strategies in cybersecurity, because defense as a whole, it isn't enough. It never is enough.
Some of the most important things that have had the most far-reaching influence and have been the most important in terms of what's been discovered, not just by Anonymous, but by the media in the aftermath, is a result of hacking. That information can't be obtained by the traditional journalistic process, or it can't be obtained or won't be obtained by a congressional committee or a federal oversight committee. For the most part, that information has to be, obtained by hackers.
After this had happened, although only a small number of people had participated, the collective mood was exuberance within Anonymous. It was a kind of moment of the lulls being recharged, which people were excited about because people felt like the lulls had been running low during the Middle Eastern protests. And so it was a moment of great triumphalism within Anonymous.
Anonymous is currently targeting Sony's website. We are doing this because Sony is currently suing people for making features the PlayStation originally had available to the public.
It started off as a denial of service attacks, but then someone really broke into the PlayStation network and stole all the user accounts and all the credit card information.
Sony has confirmed that hackers broke into its PlayStation network, exposing the personal information of up to 77 million users worldwide.
Anonymous basically bent Sony over and had their way with them, and the consumers were the ones that also got hurt in the process. 2 months of people not being able to use the PlayStations, that actually had real hardcore end-user impact. If they break into a site and they pull back customer information, do they really need to disclose 100,000 customers? No. What they're doing could be done a lot better. And when I say better, I mean better for the end user, for the customers, while still making a point.
And then, kind of seemingly out of the blue, there was something by the name LulzSec that sailed into the seas.
Well, LulzSec, it's sort of a group of a couple people, mostly from Anonymous, who, in large part, were the same people who hacked HB Gary. And they decided to form this little group and just carry on operations sort of outside of the purview of Anonymous for a while.
They hacked whatever they wanted, they released whatever they wanted. It's almost like they had no rules. They just said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to stir up the cart. We're going to get some trouble. We're going to make some waves. And they did.
What they did was they put on a play. Not high arts, not lowbrow either. It wasn't particularly, let's just say, grotesque. Their symbol was a kind of cartoon caricature of the Monopoly man with a monocle and a cigarette. There was a lot of iconography of boats and ships, pirate motifs, and then, of course, a cat.
Chaos and mayhem. Right now, it's probably one of the right things to do.
Some of the things LulzSec did in the court of public opinion were less noble. Private citizens were being doxxed, or the credit card numbers that could have been redacted. You could still make your point without actually, giving up people's personal details. So the court of public opinion swayed that LulzSec had crossed lines that maybe the previous manifestations had not.
Collateral damage, such as the release of docs and people's personal information who are just caught in the crossfire, really, of an anonymous confrontation, is something that a lot of anons don't really support.
There was a lot of, infighting about it because their way, wasn't really our way. We will not attack the media.
PBS's Frontline runs a documentary on mainly focused on Bradley Manning, the alleged leaker to WikiLeaks. And just for a lot of Bradley Manning supporters didn't like it. They felt it was a little too psychologizing, right? It was like looking a little bit more like his personal life than like why it is he leaked the documents and what the documents actually meant.
They hacked a website putting a story that Tupac and Biggie had kind of escaped the world of celebrity fame and attention and retired quietly and discreetly in New Zealand.
Lulzsec, when they attacked PBS, you know, that gave me the creeps, you know. As a journalist, I'm not too thrilled with the idea of someone judging that we don't like you to write that. We don't like your reporting, so we're going to shut down your website. I'm uncomfortable with that. It could be me, and I could be writing something about a group that they didn't like. And, you know, hey, I'm happy to sit and talk with them about it, but, you know, don't shut my website down.
This is obviously about freedom of speech, so attacking the press would be would sort of be a bit of a contradiction. So people always said, well, we shouldn't do that. And obviously Lulzsec had a completely different agenda, so they had no problem doing it.
They sort of saw themselves as going out there, breaking into like anything, everything, governments, corporations, police departments, largely for the same reasons Anonymous would. You know, they went after Arizona for immigration policy, 50-day run, causing mayhem, havoc, and then, you know, ended it.
The computer hacking group, Lulz Security, has announced it's disbanding, saying it had achieved its mission to disrupt government and corporate organizations for fun.
I call this whole thing the rise of the chaotic actor. It's not like the first time we've had hacktivism, but we're definitely seeing like a renaissance in it. And chaotic could be chaotic good, neutral, or evil. You know, if you go back to the old Dungeons and Dragons charts. And some people see Anon-Ops initially, let's stick with Anonymous, as chaotic good. They saw Operation Payback, or they saw attacking Scientology, and they say that's good. It's like Robin Hood, right? Chaotic good. Outside the system, but doing something good. Other people saw Anon as chaotic evil, like the Joker. They just want to see the world burn and doing potentially irreparable damage. And the truth is, yes, it's the entire column of chaotic.
"16 people were arrested today, but dozens of FBI agents targeted alleged members of the loose-knit hacking group. Armed with search warrants, agents hit 6 homes in New York, along with locations across the country.
The people arrested yesterday were suspected of attacking PayPal's website after the company shut off payments to WikiLeaks.
Defenders of the hackers say they're merely engaged in civil protest, but FBI officials worry the disruptive cyber attacks could move in a more dangerous direction.
So the FBI shows up at 6 in the morning, and it was really obnoxious. And I remember being frustrated and angry because there was nothing that I had done that would have justified an FBI search warrant.
They came and guns blazing, all this other good stuff, busted down the door. I immediately just dropped down to the floor, 180, didn't want nothing. I wasn't trying to fight nobody.
Theory of the case is they were, you know, they flooded, quote unquote, a number of people flooded access to PayPal, thereby creating economic distress to a protected corporation. End of story. This is not a case involving identity theft, involving outing emails, involving violating privilege, involving theft of services, involving, you know, shutting down business. It is a pure case of internet or cyber sit-ins. I think when Barack Obama gets on television and says, flood the switchboard, shut down the Republicans, send the message, that's legal. And even if you accept what the theory of this prosecution is, it's no different. This is an electronic sit-in at its finest.
If you're a pedophile, the average is 11 years. If you're a computer hacker, the average is 15. And I think that's ridiculous. So, yeah. I mean, no, that's ridiculous. I mean, you can go molest children and get less of a sentence than you would for breaking into someone's phone.
Even if you accept what the government is saying is true, what is important is that people are participating in the process. It is very much the process. It is sitting in a counter in Selma, Alabama. 500 Freedom Riders refusing to allow people to go and sit in at a segregated lunch counter. They write books about that stuff. It is demonstrating in a street corner saying no to a war. It's just a different, it's just a different vehicle. It's the same results.
For 9 months I ran from my indictment, but they busted me. I went to jail, I bonded out, and then I held a news conference, you know, because as risky as that was and against my lawyer's advice, I wanted the world to know some fucking things about what's going on. I didn't want the feds to have the only voice in the dialogue.
This document alleges that I am the notorious hacker activist known to the world as Commander X. I am Commander X. The indictment further alleges that I am in association with the global internet freedom movement known as Anonymous. And I say yes, I am immensely proud, humbled to the core, to be a part of the idea called Anonymous.
You know, I would never compare myself to people like Gandhi or Dr. Martin Luther King, but they were one person, and they were willing to go out and change the world. And their messages live on every day, through everybody. And to not take the chance of having something like that to do is foolish.
I only wish we had 50 million Mercedes haven. I feel a lot more comfortable as a guy getting towards the tail end of his career if there were more Mercedes.
There's always going to be legal consequence when you decide to break the law. That comes with the territory. And it would be naive not to expect that. The question is whether the punishment will be proportional to the crime. And I suspect it might not be. People will be watching very closely to see how these cases proceed, on what grounds, and whether there's any room during the trials to think, especially of the denial of service attacks, as a legitimate form of protest. So much of our lives are now configured, at least in part, on the internet, so we better start thinking about how we claim parts of the internet as spaces that we can also protest in.
This is the point in history at which you decide whether or not protesting is possible online. You can stand up and you can say freedom of speech extends to online. We have the right to not be monitored by our government because of our opinions. It's up to you.
You're in the position of Huck Finn. Do you remember Huck Finn at the end of the book? He's told he's got to take that slave and give it back. Two things will happen if he doesn't. One, legally, he'll go to jail, because Jim is property. Two, he'll be damned eternally and burned in hellfire, because he's in an evangelical environment in Missouri. And Huck smokes his corncob pipe all night and thinks about it, and next morning he says, well, damn it, I'll go to hell then. In other words, he discovered that in order to be an expert at ethics, you had to transcend the legal and sanctioned religious appropriate truths of the day in order to access the meta-truth of both legality and righteousness. Well, hackers see themselves as Huck putting down that corncob pipe and saying, all right, I'll go to jail. All right, I'll go to hell, but I'm going to do the right thing.
I suppose the question you really want to ask is, would I do it again? And honestly, after thinking about it, I felt that I did what was right. I had a belief, I still do, that what I did was the right thing, and hopefully someone got some good out of it. You know, I'd love to think that maybe I stopped someone from joining a cult. You know, probably wouldn't tell on myself next time, but you know, I don't think I would have changed a single thing other than the whole talking to the FBI thing.
Just that little
yeah, just the little detail that kind of changed everything. Yeah.
I'm angry. Occasionally I have small breakdown moments of terror, but I haven't stopped believing what I believed. I haven't stopped wanting to fight. I haven't stopped caring.
Show me what democracy looks like!
I don't think this whole issue is a technical hacking thing. This is more about human philosophy and psychology. What's motivating us? Why is there so much unrest or disenfranchisement or anger that would lead people to want to take matters into their own hands and join these? Whether you think it's bad or not is irrelevant. It's not going away.
I have stood upon the mountaintop known as Anonymous and looked down on a world inflamed with revolution. What can you say? Your spine tingles when you're at the cusp of history. When you're surfing, the waves of history, your spine tingles.
There's a lot of people in Anonymous who feel very deeply and very sincerely about their contribution towards democracy around the world. And I think that's one of the main things that I'm most proud of about Anonymous. There are things that I'm not proud of about Anonymous, but we stand against censorship and we stand against oppressive governments, even our own. It's a very noble thing.
If you have power in real life and you have money in real life, it doesn't fucking matter on the internet. What matters on the internet is your actual ideas, how smart you are, the quality of you. And when certain organizations, they want to extend their real life power onto the internet, it's not gonna fucking take because of Anonymous.
And history teaches us that change simply doesn't come with flowers. It doesn't work. If they say I'm a criminal, damn, well, then I will be one.
Anonymous is evolving thing. It's like a phoenix. It might occasionally catch fire and burn to the ground, but it'll be reborn from ashes. It'll be reborn stronger.
I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican or an independent, or if you like Ron Paul, or if you worship pigeons or Scientology, or if you're Catholic or atheist or Methodist. I don't care about that. Your opinion matters. I don't care if I disagree with it. I don't care if I hate your guts. Your opinion matters.
I hereby declare this to be an unlawful assembly.